Let's get corrupted. What up, guys? It's your boy Joe with Meteoric Serpents coming back at you for another episode of the Colubrid Corruption Podcast. Today is episode number 12, and tonight's guest is Jason Hood from Snakes Unlimited. Guys, very awesome guest tonight. He keeps a lot of amazing species, and I don't know if you saw the description of the YouTube or my Instagram post. He was arguably one of my favorite tables at Daytona. Some of the snakes he had there were just awesome, not species you see every day for sure. So really excited to kind of get into it and, talk about what's going on in Jason's collection. Guys, as usual, I tell you every week, I do have Meteoric Serpents t-shirts. If anyone is interested in those, please let me know. Also, all my social media is down here below. Instagram, obviously, that's the best place to reach me. I post everything there. Then YouTube, obviously, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button on today's podcast, and drop a comment if you're watching this on the replay. Let me know that you're watching it. I appreciate it, guys. Morph Market, I have some snakes available there. I'm actually going to post up a couple more that I have not posted, and that's cool. And Facebook, I actually decided to stream this to Facebook today. So I think StreamYard is going to Facebook. So if anyone wants to watch from my Facebook page, you can. But yeah, that's cool. Otherwise, I've been telling people where I've been varying my diet. That's from Blake's Exotic Feeders. He has some great quail. And that's something me and Jason are going to talk about because I know that he breeds his own quail. So that's a cool thing, varying the diet for these species. It's definitely good stuff. Let's see who's in the building tonight. And I saw Chris. I am repping Chris Montross, Dark Horse, Herpetoculture. Great shirt. Thank you, bro. Appreciate it. Eric B, No Rock Kim. What's going on, man? Thanks for being here. Eric's More Factory, my guy. Saw you this weekend. Good to see you. Believe your name is Adam, right? Ivory Colubrid Co. What's up, man? Hope you're doing good, and no problem for missing last week. Krista, Neurophi Exotics, one of the people that just got a shirt from me, or she'll be getting it later this week. DGB, was good to meet you this weekend, yesterday at Boynton Repticon. I was vending there, so that was cool. Don D, what's up? Thanks for being here. Chris, good call. I really like the shirt. Thank you. Obsoleta forever on the back. I'm not going to turn all the way around, but yeah. And Donnell, thank you for being here. All right, guys, let's get into it. Let's bring Jason out and let's talk some colubrids. What's up, man? How are you?
Good.
All right. Awesome. Yeah, so like I was saying before, you just really have a wide range of species, which is awesome to see. Something that's increasingly evident that I see with all colubrid keepers is just the wide range of and variety of species that they keep. And I even saw, some monitors on your page. So it's cool to see. But thank you for being here, man. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. So obviously just kind of like introductions, would you mind telling everyone kind of where this started for you, how you got into snakes? You could go as long as short as you want, and how you got where you are today.
I've done a bunch of these, so I think everybody's heard my silly story. It's the same as most people's, but the one thing I was thinking about the other day is I went down to Palm Beach, and I used to live on the other side of 95 where what used to be Deer Park Zoo is, and there's what the science building that's behind it. And if you go, I don't know if it's still there, because this was years and years ago, but we'd go over there because there was a plane fuselage on the side of the building. We'd play in that all the time because we lived nearby, and we just go over there. And then we would sneak into the zoo because there was a hole cut in the fence. So I was in the zoo and going to the reptile building all the time over there. And then what was making me laugh is I just saw a little kid like in cutoff shorts and no shirt, no shoes. And that was me. I couldn't figure out how they knew I snuck into the zoo, but I was there with no shirt and no shoes. It was kind of obvious, but
yeah,
I didn't, I was too young and dumb to even think about it. And then I went there with my dad, and the zero chill from the zoo staff, they came up and tried to throw me out with my dad there
Really?
because you snuck in again. I'm like, no, we paid to get in. Look, I got the stamp. Leave me alone. And they went, oh, your son's sneaking in here all the time. So, but yeah, growing up in Florida, you come up with all the animals all around you. And now it's way more exotics down where you're at than when I was there. When I was there, it was just curly tails. And I caught one of those as a kid after catching 1,000 brown and oles, and let that bite me, because that's what we always did as kids, is let them bite you, and that was a mistake. Then I moved up north, got a bearded dragon as one of my first captive reptiles, and then moved back here and did corn snakes and rat snakes for a while. Ran into Kathy Love, which was amazing to be able to see her constantly at the shows, and she's just such a great influence on the hobby. I think she's like, I don't know if you follow her on Facebook or not, but she's constantly just like the even keel of every argument. She comes in there with like a good logic based sentiment. That's like, I've never seen her make a statement where I thought, nah, she's wrong there. Like, she's always just right in the middle. But way back then, she had gotten out of Everglades rat snakes, and I had gotten some of her last animals. So when people were looking for them, she sent them to me, which was, Kathy was a corn snake god and a rat snake god back then. So to have her recommend some 20-year-old idiot that had a couple of her snakes was ridiculous. So she helped me out huge. And then when I moved to Chicago, she put a good word in for me going up there with the Reptile Society up there, and that was amazing, because they basically sucked me onto the board, and I got to do the behind the scenes stuff with the board of directors with the Herp Society up there, and it was a real Herp Society.
Okay.
Here was two guys that were the lifelong president and vice president, and we had a speaker on sea beans, which is it was interesting. Definitely pertinent to Florida. Lots of good information about them. They spend like up to 10 years at sea, from coming out of Brazil, coming out of the Amazon. All of that's fascinating. Still not reptile related, but that was a topic at our reptile society down here. But up there, it was all the time. People doing real research, and it was just a complete, like, here. I think it's still part of the culture here. It was no scientific names, and there it was. If you don't know the scientific names, that's fine, but you really need to learn them. And then I didn't really think about it until I left the country. I went to Peru, and I tried to talk to people from other countries, and we were having a discussion, and I'm like, like a black rat snake, it's a black snake that eats rat. Okay, I realize how stupid this sounds right now. You're trying to describe a snake that's thousands, not a thousand snake, but it's. So that's one thing I try to. I'm not like the egotistical, you need to learn this because I know it, and if not, you're a dummy. But for your own benefit, learn at least all the species you keep, the scientific names. I mean, in the state of Florida now, with the permit system, they make you do it with WC. So that's kind of like a weird good thing.
You know what's funny? And you know what's funny? I've commented about that before. I have Texas rats, so it's like, what do I you know what? I just applied for my permit. I got it back in September because I'm newer to Florida and selling down here, and I put the old obsoleta name, but like, I'm wondering if someone, who knows if they know, but who I like, if someone goes, well, there's no such thing as Linheimeri anymore or something like that. But
the guy who would call you on that's not approving your permits.
Okay.
So when I moved back down here, I was at Daytona. I got my table late. I was against the front wall. The FWC walks in, and I want to say it's Officer Brown. I can't remember his name because I try not to know their names.
Probably. I met him in Orlando a couple months ago.
Yeah. He I mean, he's a no nonsense guy, but he came to my table, and he was training a guy, and he's like, well, this is Jason Hood. I see him reading something on a piece of paper, and he puts a paper down, and he's like, so this species here was formerly Sustes bacillinotus, but now it's Frontenac bacillinotus, and they're a really interesting species. They change colors, they develop, so it'll be hard for you to be able to identify. And he's going into them like he knows 100% about them. I'm like, well,
oh, really?
And it was a dead spot in the show. I'm like, excuse me, why do you know about these? Like, I could show that species. I mean, not now, but this was 8 years ago. And prior to me making them very popular, it was myself and my friend Gavin Brink, who sadly passed. But besides us, nobody had them. Everybody that has them is because of Gavin, myself included. Nobody knew what they were. I mean, I'm sure there was a handful of guys that had them. I mean, obviously before Gavin, before myself, everybody had all these species that are old timers. But the modern day group of them, nobody knew what they were. And we brought them to Tinley. Nobody could identify the animals. People walk at the table like, "What's that?" Like, all that, you name a big name in the hobby, they could not identify the stuff. So for have him do that, I was like, "What's that all about?" So I said, "Is there a problem or anything?" He's like, "No, why?" I'm like, "I'm just curious how the hell you know about this species, because that's my job to know about it." I'm like, no. Your job's to know about black pines and Burmese pythons and shit. My stuff's so obscure. That's not your job at all, bro. And he's like, no. My job's to know everything. I'm like, I appreciate the sentiment that is definitely your job, but most of your officers can't identify, a Texas rat or a Texas indigo from an Eastern indigo,
right?
Or from a black pat spitting cobra. I actually had a guy years ago who had the FWC called on him, and they were trying to say that his black pack cobra was an indigo. So, like, anyways, all that to say, the FWC guys, some of them really know their stuff, and some of them
that's
don't.
good to know. Yeah, well, it's good to know that some of them perhaps do.
The office guys they're just passing paper.
Yeah.
So it's a wide realm. Anyway, sorry, tangent.
No,
that's why I did the scotch, so I can stop doing so many tangents.
No worries. And then all of that got to where you are today. And as you mentioned, I think one of the allures to you and what you do is the amount of obscure species you have, just stuff you don't commonly see in the hobby. And I always appreciate that because, even someone like me, and I don't want to say they're uncommon, but like the Texas rat snakes, I feel obscure breeding them and wanting to go so in depth about them, so crazy. Like, not that they're an uncommon thing, but like, I just love them because that's what got me into the hobby. And you keep a lot more cool things as well. So I kind of wanted to get into that. First, let's start off with kind of the basics, because I was scrolling through your page. I obviously want to see what you have. And even at Daytona, I saw some of your tables. So most of your colubrids wise, you're keeping all like New World stuff. So all North, Central, and South American colubrids.
Yeah, I failed miserably with some of the Asian stuff. Okay. I did get a pair of adult Ridley Eye. I brought in a group earlier 2 years ago, and within 6 weeks, all of them died in quarantine.
Really?
I don't think that was me, but I had Mullendorfs for years. I could never get them to breed, so I've tried to stay out of the Asian colubrids. Billy Hunt's got me looking at some of the European stuff, but he gets a little funky if I go after the same species he's keeping. He doesn't like that, so I might stay out of those for a little while. But he got the ladder rat snakes, which is the corn snakes and other rat snakes, was a book by, I think it was Bartlett, had a yellow rat snake on the cover, and he discussed them in there, and they just sounded cool. So I always kind of wanted to get them, and then Billy got them, and I'm like, oh man, I always kind of wanted those. And Billy's like, oh come on, man, you're gonna come in and take all my species from me. So I'll give him a couple years and I'll buy some from him.
Nice. Yeah, and he's the one that convinced me that I should be good on keeping rhino rats in my collection, but I keep a couple Asian species. But yeah, so you do keep some. I kind of want to talk about, I don't want to call them the basics, but like kind of, some of the stuff you see more commonly. So you have the Honduran milks. I saw a couple different Pituophis species, some Baird's rats. Anything I'm kind of missing from there?
I got the Baird's. I'm out of corns again right now.
Right.
I'll probably get corns as well. I'll probably get corns again in the future because I just always love Oketees, but corns drive me nuts because of the customer bargaining aspect of things. That's kind of one of the reasons I got into obscure stuff is I don't have that. If you don't like my
Right.
price, okay, well, no one else breeds it, so okay.
Good
But
call.
with corn snakes, it's well, his are $5 less, and it's like I don't want to negotiate on. And it's like some of the less expensive animals are more difficult to sell. People are more apt to negotiate with you on less expensive stuff.
Right.
And that's just not that I get that there's negotiation, but there's also the mentality that there's a whole group of people at shows that their entire mentality is they walk around, they look at every table, pick something on the table and say, how much? Well, how much if I get 2? Or what's the best you'll do on it? And they have no intention of buying. They're just trying to negotiate for the sense of negotiating and just kind of waste your time.
Yeah.
And so some of my stuff being high end, they just skip me. Like when I do the tegus, I got that constantly, man. FWC making them illegal to keep in the state or sell in the state was kind of a benefit to me because I really love tegus.
Yeah.
They are amazing animals. They're incredibly smart, different personalities, a whole bunch of different looks on them. But the people in the tegu world are just mind-numbingly infuriating. Not like the dedicated keepers, but all of the like just coming in the hobby buyers that they shouldn't have them anyway. They're not a bearded dragon. They're
and they're like, I just want to have the little dinosaur, basically. Like that's their.
Or they want the Clifford, the big red tegu off of YouTube, and it's like that's a lot of work in an individual that was very calm. You can't just grab any, like especially. I'm getting worked up here. Every year, you would watch the golden tegus come in, and people would be like, "I don't know what's wrong with my tegu." You know, everybody else I see has calm tegus. These things are crazy. So you got a fucking golden tegu. It's not a black and white. It's not an Argentine.
Yeah.
You didn't even like pay attention to what species it was. You just went for the one that was cheap. It's $100 instead of $300 or whatever the price point is. I totally don't miss that part of that hobby, but also with the common stuff, I kind of don't do a ton of it. I got way more recently because I do want to be able to do some wholesale stuff and kind of be able to kind of fund projects.
Right.
So to what you're asking, I got the Hondurans, I've got the Beards, I got black rats of a few different morphs, some bull snakes of a couple different morphs, and Beards. I think that's it for the kind of more common stuff, and the cave dwellers. Not that they're super common, but they've just gotten way more common recently.
Okay.
But
gotcha. And how has your experience? Because like I've seen some of your production, like you produce some really nice Hondurans, some nice Pituophis. Like you enjoy keeping those species and doing some cool stuff there.
Yeah, no, I love to keep them. They're great because they're not CITES species. So when the Asian market's hot on one of those, I sold all my bull snakes this year to an Asian buyer that wanted to take them all at list price. Like I thought he was actually, I don't think he's going to listen to this. So I thought he was just kind of BSing me. I thought it was just because you get a bunch of phishing emails from Asian buyers as well. I got how much for all of these? How much for the whole clutch? And I'm like, well, it's, they're $300 a piece times 10. That's going to be $3,000. And then those, and he's like, okay, I'll take them. I'm like, let me see if this goes, the payment goes through. Let's make sure the bank draft clears and all that. But I don't mind that at all. Like if you have the right species and the Asian buyers are looking, then you're in a good spot.
So can we talk about that a little bit more? How much have you dealt with kind of the exporting game? Because it's definitely something that's becoming more prevalent as the Asian market kind of. Oh,
you came back now.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry, I think you lagged. I was kind of just saying, how has that experience been for you? Kind of that exporting game, because I've been seeing over the last couple of years that Asian market has really been opening up, and those buyers want to spend bread.
No, for sure. I do not do the export myself.
Okay.
If they want them, They need to have an import-export guy that they can work with. I'm not trying to get caught up in that. You need to go through, Fish and Wildlife or whoever to get the permits to export. And I don't want to break a law I didn't know existed and screw up. And I'm incredibly by the books. If I even think you're trying to talk to me about something that might be illegal, I just cut it off right away, because the hobby needs to understand, like, there's going to be a big, giant federal bitch slap to the hobby sometime very soon with all these Mexican species that have come in over the last decade or two. They are not we're gonna investigate this real quick and hit you with this little thing here. They are a long game, slow moving machine that is just going to wipe some people out. There is so much stuff that came in from Mexico on sketchy basis. I stay away from all of that. Same with Asia, same with Europe. I do not touch it. If I think it could be illegal, I don't touch it, because I have too much nice stuff. Why am I going to risk all my nice stuff for a couple bucks now? That makes zero sense. I don't understand guys that do that. But the as far as the export goes, I either deal with Northern Lights, or I guess Mike Barrera is now doing some exports with Colubrid, and I ship. If I let the customer know, hey, these are the people that are shipping that I'm happy to deal with, or was it DDS Dutch Dragon, or DDI Dutch Dragon International also does them. I've never dealt with him personally, but my take on it is, you pay me directly, you pay them directly. I don't want to get involved with it. I don't want you thinking anything with the shipping was to do with me. I'm not upping the price because of shipping, and my price includes shipping to that location. If the purchase is good enough, I'll pay in country shipping. I'll, especially going to Mike in Miami at Snakes at Sunset. That's just stupidly easy. So, I have no problem dealing with that. But I don't get into the nitty gritty, dirty side of it with the actual import export. I don't have that kind of time. I have a real job that takes way too much time. So, but yeah, no, it's if you have species that they want, most of these guys know how to get stuff in and out of the country, hopefully legally. I take a legal purchase, I ship to a legal destination. What happens beyond that is out of my hands and out of my care. I'm not worried about that end of things.
Right. I could say personally, I was speaking to a lady over Facebook from China about some rat snakes, and we were kind of discussing things, and I think she was a little confused about certain morphs on the different, like, between black and Texas rats. She had some calicos that she was calling Texas. I'm like, no, I don't think that's right. Either way, I was like, oh, like, I'm sure you guys want more morphs, but I didn't realize, only because I'm newer to learning about this stuff, that China's laws are just super vague when it comes to reptiles. So I was like, so we were discussing it, and she was like, yeah, basically we had this all, like, we have to smuggle it. And I'm like, oh, okay. I'm like, yeah, conversation's over about even me considering that. And I heard it's happened with, I don't want to throw people under the bus, but I heard it happens with people in the hognose industry. They send stuff over there. So I don't know. It's a risky game, and it's not one I'm willing to play.
I've been doing this 20 years. I'm long-term. I'm not trying to get short-term money. Any of that stuff that you're going to be dealing with, you can sell it elsewhere as well. You're looking at a short-term gain to risk everything. Like, that makes zero sense to me. There's plenty of horror stories of U.S. Fish and Wildlife taking an entire collection because this, like hognose, like you said, one of the guys had the hognose, the leucistic hognose that came out of Colorado, I think it was the original, and it was protected there or something. I don't remember I don't know the details. Whatever it was, they went in and took his whole collection, or someone else had a bunch of rubber boas that did nothing illegal, but they were under suspicion of doing something illegal. Rubber boas in whatever, Oregon or whatever. I don't remember the details of that either, but they had the entire collection taken and then returned slowly to them in emaciated condition. They didn't get fed the whole time they were with the government. A bunch of animals died. Like, there's animals in my collection I absolutely love. There's other animals in the collection that are there. It's just how it is. You got a huge collection. There's some animals that have a personality you get attracted to that says, hey, this is an animal that I've had some moments with, whether it's getting bit in the face or that cuddles up to you, whatever it is. There's some moments. There's other animals that are just there.
Okay.
I don't want to lose any of them.
Yeah.
Never mind over something stupid, over a couple bucks. Like I don't. The idea, the guys who smuggle think they're so slick or like that's just so dumb to me. Like what's his name? He was down your way originally, came halfway up to me. Ashton Rance. That clown's in prison. Oh, he's in prison over stupid stuff. I don't even know what he's in prison for right now, but he had so many violations, and he's the reason we have tegus in Georgia. Those were his. That population is directly because of him. He's the reason we have them in Port St. Lucie. They're directly because of him. He released them. And that's what the scary thing is a lot of these animals, a single bad player can do a ton of damage.
Yep.
And he was one of them that did a ton. I mean, and he's luckily out of the hobby, unfortunately. Damage as well that have much better names than him.
Yeah.
That one we're going to leave alone because I don't want to get sued, but
oh, it's all good. Okay, cool. And then next on the list, I wanted to talk about, you have some of the dry marking species. You have the blacktail cribos. And do you have the yellows as well?
I have blacktails, yellowtails, and Mexicans.
Okay.
And my opinion on those is the blacktails are definitely my favorite. They're just a much cooler, calmer animal. And that's one of the ones where like my big male that I have, he's one of those personality animals that like, I love that guy. He is cool as hell. I got him from a good friend of mine, and they came in as just hey, this is a good investment. The price is right. Let me grab them. And then quickly became like really personable animals, and they're very cool. The yellowtails just tend to stay a little more. I mean, they're arguably a prettier animal or a flashier animal, but they just seem that they're a little more stressful. They're a little more stressed on themselves and on you. And the Mexicans, so far they've been very cool. I mean, they're definitely, if you want a big giant black indigo cribo species, but you don't want the BS of the federal permits, those are Texas are definitely the way to go. And I kind of like the Mexicans even better than the Texans. So that's why I got those. But that was Ron St. Pierre's a buddy of mine, and he was just like, I don't want to do snakes. I got these, but I don't want to do them. So do you want to trade me back some lizards for those? I'm like, yeah, let's do it, because the lizards, I'm getting my butt kicked by the lizards. So
yeah.
But those have been very cool as well. But yeah, the cribos in general are just an interesting group. They're a diurnal species. I think any of the diurnal species just have a more personality. I think that's why everybody loves garter snakes. If you keep garters, people love garters because they're personable. They're visually oriented.
Yes. They
react to you. They understand you're a food source. Cribos do the same thing. The whole puffing snake complex does the same thing. Racers and coach whips do the same thing. If you can get them to calm down enough, they're given the proper caging, they'll do it for you. So they're, I think, and that's what I think I'm seeing a lot right now is people are kind of realizing that's out there, that they can get day active snakes and have a whole different interaction with them. They're more lizard-like.
Yeah, and I think people are also starting to learn that they're these big, impressive colubrid. Like they just want that feel of like a big snake that isn't, a giant python. They're also, from what I've heard, just super intelligent animals. Can you speak on that a little bit? Because that's the thing I've always heard about dry marking is just they're very smart.
That's that diurnal thing.
Yeah.
I think all snakes are intelligent. I think we're shooting ourselves in the foot to not understand that snakes are intelligent. Sorry, I live in the country and someone just shot a large gun.
It's okay.
But all snakes are intelligent. It's just we don't understand how they express their intelligence. If you have a snake escape, you put it back in its enclosure and don't fix the method of escape, it goes right back out there. That's a sign of intelligence. With the diurnal species, the Drymarchon, the king cobras are notoriously diurnal. There was a talk we had at the CHS where these guys were tracking king cobras, and the thing it was a male that they were tracking, would build a nest before sunset, curl up inside of it, and go to sleep. And then sun comes up the following morning, it pops up out of its nest and catches some rays, warms up, heats up, and takes off. But it's that intelligence that you're talking about is that diurnal, visually oriented thing, because nocturnal animals don't have the visual orientation. They don't look at you in the same way. They don't react to you in the same way. And their methodology of defense is to sit still and be invisible. Whereas diurnal species, some of them sit still to be invisible, but some of them, they have to have that it's time to get up and go. So they offer you a little bit more thought that you can understand.
Right. Okay.
Like if we could run a maze, run an animal through a maze, and we say, okay, that's intelligent because it can learn the maze. Well, snakes do that too, but they don't do it on our time scale. We want, boom, here they go. Whereas if they run a maze, if they run a maze and get food, and you put them back in that maze for food the following week, they might go get the food, but it might take them. They might wander around a little bit, but they're going to get where they need to go. But we you know what I mean? Like it's not. I don't think we give them the opportunity of intelligence for one, and two, we're trying to measure their intelligence.
Oh, am I lagging? Hold on 1 second. Hold on. Are you back? I think I lost you for a few seconds.
Yeah, sorry. I'm here by the grace of Elon Musk and what's it called? His internet satellite. I am in the country. Starlink.
It's all good.
Yeah, I am in the country. We don't have cable internet, and the wind blows too hard or a cloud goes by, and we get interruptions. But yeah, no, I was saying this. I don't think we try to measure reptiles with mammalian scale. And they're just not the same, especially nocturnal species. Like people want to say that ball pythons are big dumb lumps that just are rocks that sit in a cage. But I think if you give a ball python the opportunity, it'll show you its intelligence. They have to be intelligent, especially Africa. Africa is not a friendly continent. Yeah, they can't be dumb and live. That's just not the combo that works.
Yeah, I agree with you, and that's definitely kind of opened my eyes in that the way you're kind of explaining it. I think we see these snakes, and I say it all the time. They like these tight confined spaces. They like sitting in the dark. But yeah, I mean, we keep them in these rack systems and probably don't give them that chance to show their intelligence. But I don't know. Yeah, so it's a good point.
Yeah, even the racks. I think the racks are detrimental to some species as well. I use racks. Racks are a tool, but at the end of the day, hello, baby. My dog just came in to say hi.
No problem.
But with king snakes, for instance, I've kept king snakes in glass front enclosures, or all glass enclosures. When I did back in the day, when I actually did aquariums, and then like I split clutches, not mindfully, but I ran out of glass aquariums, and then the rest go into a rack. And I saw differences in the animals, and that was 20 years ago. And I was just like, damn, man! Like the animals that were in the racks were just the mouth open, I'm gonna eat you reaction, and the animals that were in enclosures, while they were food aggressive for sure, they kind of learned that I was there, and only when I brought food did they get food aggressive. And it just wasn't the same interaction. Like I could go to the glass front enclosures and go into them and deal with stuff in there, and I wouldn't get this giant snake trying to eat me. But the everything in the rack was there because we only give them so much stimuli in a rack. So and again, I use racks. Racks are a tool. If you're doing large scale production, you're going to use racks. But ball pythons do not have to go into a rack. I think it's a detriment to the entire hobby that, unfortunately, ball pythons in particular, but a whole bunch of YouTube famous individuals that influence a bunch of people suggested that racks were the best way to go with everything. And that was, again, 15, 20 years ago that happened. And there was an entire generation here that kind of lost the ability to watch their animals and learn from them because of racks.
Right. And yeah, no, I agree. I definitely see kind of with certain species, the ethics of that. And I can say personally right now, I'm keeping in racks, and that's mainly because of a space thing. I used to keep my animals in tanks. I only had a few rat snakes, and then we moved down here to Florida, got myself a rack, and then one turned to more, and that's kind of what it is. But, I do want to work with species, and I will be working with some species soon that I think will benefit more from cages. So that upgrade will happen eventually. I want to get into probably chondros too. Whether or not I breed them is up for debate, but obviously, those are animals that have to go into cages eventually. So, it's something
there's arboreal racks people use, but
yeah, no, for hatchlings, I know for hatchlings, and it kind of makes sense to a degree, but no, the caging is cool, and I think you're right. Observing your species and really learning from them that way is a super beneficial tool that's underrated.
Yeah, there's many times to this day I'll set up I think a lot of us in the hobby have ADD and OCD habits,
right?
And I'll not look at animals that are set up, but if I set up a fresh cage, like I get super meticulous with the cage, and then I watch the animal and see how it likes the cage, and
right.
that individual cage gets all my attention for the next couple of weeks. And that's just kind of my own idiosyncrasy. But every time I go in, I want to see where the animal is, what it's doing, what hides it's using, how it's using the cage. Is it burrowing in the substrate? What, is it up top? What's happening? And then after a little while, I just kind of do another one, and then that one gets all my attention. So it's cages are hugely beneficial because in the time that I'm staring at that individual, I'm definitely learning more about that animal in that time frame than I would otherwise, because it's actually showing me what it likes and dislikes. And that's like, people ask what humidity I use or what temperature I keep stuff at. I'm like, I put a light on them, and if they're not underneath the light, I drop the wattage, and if they're underneath the light all the time, I up the wattage, because you want the animal to not be in the heat constantly. If it's constantly in the heat, it's too cold.
Yeah,
that's pretty obvious.
Yes,
but in a drawer, you open the drawer and it's always kind of over the heat, because you have to have the heat at a livable temperature. So most people put their hot spot at, say, 86, 88, 92, somewhere in that range. And the animal's kind of always there because it's not really that temperature inside the cage. And that's kind of where they want to kind of be in the mid to high 80s. So that's kind of where they end up always. Whereas if you give them more heat, in more space, it gives them the ability to do that thermoregulation and move from one side of the cage to the other, move to the front and back of the cage space. But we, as a hobby, kind of run the median. Like, this is especially with the what do you call it? The sheets, the care sheets. There's a temperature point that people say, hey, this is the point right here. Whatever the species is. I think ball pythons, it's 92. So 92 is a hot spot. So they set it up, and that's where the ball python sits forever, because it's not really 92 inside the bin. It's more like 90, 88, because there's that temperature diffusion.
Yeah.
So it's never quite where it needs to be. So it's always trying to get enough heat. Whereas if you give it a large cage with a basking spot, then in that basking spot's 110, 120 degrees. It's going to go into it for a little bit and get out. And I'm sure there's people who are like, 120 degrees, that's crazy. That'll kill the animal. No, that's what they do in the wild. Like, if you ever down in Palm Beach County, if you go flip tin, you find it, especially in the cane fields where the snakes get run over by the tills and stuff, they'll get run over and live, and you'll find them, and they'll be at 115, 120 degrees underneath tin, just boiling hot. You pick them up, and they're hot to the touch.
Right.
That's where they wanted to be. They're healing. But if we don't offer it to them, then we the snake's got problems.
Yeah.
Sure, it does.
And when it comes to temperatures, that's one thing I've always said. Not even just about hot. I also think about like cooler as well. Like I think some people keep some of their animals a little too hot without realizing, and it's like, hey guys, like they could take not I don't want to make it seem like they can take more than that, like they're hardy animals, but people are like, yeah, we have to have this drilled in 90-degree hot spot all day long, all year long, 24/7. And it's like,
Yeah.
is that really good? Is that really happening in the wild? I don't personally think so. That's why I keep a lot of my stuff actually at ambient in my garage here in Florida. Now, obviously that ticks on a little bit more. I have some heat on certain racks, but that ticks on a little bit more when it gets colder down here, as we've mentioned. It has a couple days.
Yeah.
But even when it gets cooler, it's like, you guys don't think there's some colder nights in Africa? Like, it's just, you flip the continents around, or, so our summer is their winter. Like, it happens. The temperatures are going to fluctuate. It's not a perfect, it's not that perfect thermostat temperature all year round for these things.
Yeah, but if you keep it that way, then there's that much better chance you have less problems, except that you're not giving it the chance to cycle, to do its natural things. Yeah, no, it's
exactly.
There's a lot of stuff we do.
The cycling is important for their health and long-term longevity of living. So yeah.
Ron St. Pierre is a good friend of mine, and he kind of pointed out to me, he's like, the lizard hobby has advanced over the last 20 years. The fish hobby has advanced immensely over the last 20 years. The snake hobby has just kind of been like, we got this. We're good right here. We're not, and that started to change, but in a weird way, not change with the bioactive setups, where people started getting way more into lighting and stuff. So you get that great advancement in lighting, but they're not really looking at temperature. And something that we discussed, like, if nobody is keeping their reptiles actually correctly. None of us. If you really want to think about it, if think about what happens every morning when you walk outside. You walk outside every single morning. If you're up early enough, the sun doesn't come all the way up, your grass is wet.
Yeah,
right.
There's dew on the. That was the first thing I was gonna say. There's dew on the ground.
There's dew on the ground. There's dew on your car. I went to the rainforest in the middle of the dry season, and in Peru, and we walked out there, and like 11:30, 12 o'clock at night, it started sprinkling. It wasn't like a heavy rain, but it was a sprinkling.
Okay.
It was every night, and I guess we have a launch tonight too. So I apologize. My dogs are going off, and we got a launch going. It sounds like, but every night it's raining in the rainforest. That's what the rainforest does, and we can't even begin to offer that drenched wetness of a rain at night and the dryness of a dry day. That's not something we can really do in the hobby, because we can't get the cage that wet and that dry at the same time. And that's something that Ron talked about. He's like, if you can figure that out and get me cages that'll do that, he's like, I'll buy 100, 150 of them from you, and I'll promote it every podcast I go on. And I'm like, all right, cool, man. Let me try to figure this out. And I really don't have an answer for it. And it's not a mist system. It's not a mist system goes off for 30 seconds or a minute or whatever. It's not, and that's not really it either. If someone can figure that out, we're going to see a whole different level to this hobby. All these difficult species, they're not going to be difficult. Things that like the rainbow boas are difficult because of humidity, or chondros or emeralds are difficult because of humidity. They're not difficult. We're not meeting their needs in the slightest, and they're still surviving.
Yeah.
Never mind everything else that has the same needs. They need to be able to get moist at night, get their drinks at night. They sit out on their branches and coil up. If you go out there out in the rainforest at night, Chironius, the machete snake, Chironius, they're kind of one of those obscure. They're basically a South American racer that lives in the jungle, and they're beautiful. Come and hold a bunch of different species. They're coiled up on the branches above you as you walk through the jungle, sitting up on the where the trees overlap to give a nice, multi-point spot so they can lay out. So you can go underneath and you just look up and you see their belly scales above you, and they're sitting there getting all that water dripping on them, and it's nothing to them to just turn, and their coils allow the water to pool up, and they drink water at night, fresh water it's not stagnant. It's not. Wow. Everybody sprays their animals, and the animals drink when they spray them, and they don't make that jump to the next level. Like, hey, how come every time I spray my animal drinks off its coils or drinks off of leaves?
Right.
And I give it a water bowl. Why is it thirsty? It's probably not really drinking the water bowl too much. So just one of those things that we're not doing it right, but I don't know how to make it right. And if I'm just throwing it out there, if someone comes up with the right idea, maybe I'll buy a bunch of cages from you too, but Ron will buy them.
And that's someone with a lot of cages.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Awesome. And then now past the dry marking, we went on a long tangent there about keeping. But and then also actually before we get into the next couple of things, something I did notice that you've posted is that it seems like you are starting to move away from racks and go into more cages for a lot of different things, which we kind of touched on, but it's more so it seems like you just want to get, better. It's better husbandry for the animals, in your opinion, overall.
Yeah. No, I picked up, the post you're talking about, I picked up 48 Neodesha, what would you call them? A dealer down here bought them and spec'd them out. This is what he wanted. I don't know they made any others besides that, but they've got a slanted side heat exposure in a 4-foot Neodesha, so you can put heat lights on them. They've got decent ventilation, and right. I'm gonna start putting those in as much as I can. I just got to clean them all out, but my goal is to have one whole wall of nothing but those, and my other wall is already visions.
Nice.
I have a ton of stuff already in cages. But all the shit I talk, I'm still a hypocrite. I got my racks, but milk snakes I think can do better in a rack than some species. But I have rat snakes in racks, and I don't like that. They're a little more of a active climbing species. I would like to get them into caging. So I'm gonna go species by species. And right now, I've got a diamond python that's sitting in a rack that's eating a little hole in my soul. But she quarantined, then when she got out of quarantine, that was kind of what was available, and I kind of threw her there. But she's beautiful. Every time I open the drawer, she just like takes my breath away, and I'm like, why is she not in a cage yet? Because I haven't cleaned 30 something of these cages yet. That's the reason she's not in a cage. So like that's the worst thing, is I have the cage space, I just haven't gotten it cleaned and sterilized yet.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. Now I did want to go into, I guess, kind of your main things, part of what I think makes you known, some of those big time species, the Spilotes, and then obviously the I'm sorry if I mispronounce it, the Phrynonax.
Oh, Phrynonax. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, Phrynonax. Yeah.
Formerly Sustes. Yeah,
okay.
I say learn the Latin names. Don't realize it's also a dead language and no one knows how to pronounce any of this stuff. I don't.
Yep.
We had a guy come in from Germany, I think it was, to the CHS to do a talk, and we took him out field herping, and I was trying to be cool and like throw the Latin names out there, and I mispronounced something. He corrected me, and you could see me just get like hit because I was like, I thought I had that one, and he's like, my friend, don't you worry, I'm doing a terrible German accent. But he said, don't you worry. It's no one knows how the language is spoken.
Right.
So every time someone tries to correct you, realize they're correcting you on the modern pronunciation of their interpretation of something. Like, don't.
Yeah.
That's one of those things. Don't worry about that crap. But anyways, yeah. So Phrynonax are amazing. They're a species that you've got sexual dimorphism between males and females.
Yeah.
You've got color changing that happens. That it's not even octogenic color change because it keeps happening as adulthood. The yellow and black and the red and gray phase seem to stay consistent. And if they reach that as adulthood, I mean, they seem to stay consistent in that color scheme and don't really change out of it as they mature. But everything else that I've watched seems to be constantly changing. So you have a species that every 6 months or so, you have a different looking animal, which is amazing and horrible at the same time. Like my animal that I called Skittles was just like drop dead gorgeous. He looked like somebody just spilled. There's the was it a rattlesnake or something that somebody photoshopped all it looked like every scale was a different color. And that's what the species that this individual animal looked like in reality. That was what he looked like. But it looked like it was tropical fruit Skittles poured over an animal, and every scale grabbed the Skittle and took that color on. And then he kept changing and lost it. And I was like, like heartbreaking to see like he's not this amazing animal anymore. But he was still amazing in his own right. It just wasn't that like ridiculously vibrant, does not belong in nature color phase. Like it was just he was ridiculous. But the males have incredibly strong keeled scales along their back. So that's if I try to bring an adult pair with me to some of the shows when I do them, when I have the babies, and just like show people that. And they're always like, oh yeah, okay, sure. And they feel the female and they're like, oh yeah, okay. And then they feel the male, they're like, okay, what the hell? And they just they're because it's not even that they have keels.
It's like ridges right on the back.
Yeah. But it's a series of like 8 ridges, like the 8 or 10 center scales on their back. But it's not just that they're rigid, it's that it almost feels like they can cut you. It's that extreme. Yeah, no, it's beyond interesting. If I have a good year and I bring some adults with me to Daytona this coming year, definitely ask me to check it out because it's without doing it in person, I can't verbalize how extreme their scalation is.
You know what? I got to hold one in person. I held an adult male over at Kevin Barron's house. I know he got them from John at Palm Beach Colubrids. So I got to hold an adult male. I have it on my Instagram, but that animal was absolutely fantastic. And I was just like, man, I need to learn more about these things. And it's funny because I don't think I knew that you had them until I was kind of really running through your page. So I was excited to talk about them tonight because now I know a little bit more about them and have had hands-on experience with them. It's such a cool species.
Yeah, well, I think I'm pretty sure I inspired John to pick them up in the first place. And myself or Gavin. I mean, me and Gavin and John had long internet battles on Facebook and everything else about all different topics. But then John's amazing in person. We do not see eye to eye on any topic outside of reptiles, I think. But he's just such a sweet, nice guy in person. I finally tell him like, hey, we can't be Facebook friends. I can't follow you. You can't follow me. We can't communicate on Facebook. Every time I see him, I want to give the guy a hug. He's such a sweet guy. But when it comes to all the species, we like all the same species. Yeah. And he's doing great stuff. He's got a lot of the yellow and gray looking animals. He got most of his stuff out, not from me though. He picked them up, I think, through one of the import guys. I actually don't know if he's got any animals for me for that matter. He may have gotten some from Gavin. Again, I'm not sure on that. But for the most part, I don't know if you've seen any of the stuff from Reptilandia in Texas, Ketzel Dwyer and Ari Fledgel. They're doing this amazing reptile exhibit out in Texas. But while Ketzel was in Costa Rica, he was breeding them down there because they were just crawling through his reptile park down there. And he had sent babies up, and that's what kind of started it. And Gavin showed me some of the animals, and he showed them to me. Like, so they start out looking like a moss phase bush viper as hatchlings, which is an amazing look. So you get this little beautiful, ultra camouflaged, if you put it in an arboreal setup, little animal, and then it goes from this, all the bright reds and oranges and stuff, and the grays and greens of like that moss phase. They go into like what I call a tree branch phase, where they look like bark on a tree branch. And I've literally just stuck an oak branch in my enclosure when I had like groups of them. I'm like, all right, I know I have 8 animals in this 12, 12, 18. There's 8 animals in there, and okay, I can find 6. All right, where's the other 2? Go through, dig everything out, try to look around. I can't. I'm missing 2. Did they escape? What's going on? Oh shit, no, they're right here in front of me. And they literally in a 12, 12, 18 disappear on a tree branch.
Wow.
Because they're that perfectly camouflaged. And then from that point, they kind of go bland. Like the tree branch phase, I really like. It's it's gray on gray, but it's like a really neat gray on gray. Then they kind of go to a bland, like gray, brown, weird color. And then there's a fleck of color here and a fleck of color there. And then the next shed, there's like 3 more flecks of color. And then eventually they shed out one day, and it's like, what the shit? Like, where did this come from?
Yeah.
Now I've got this animal. It's just completely vibrant colors everywhere, reds and purples and blues and greens. Like, what the hell? And then they go whichever way they're going to go. And it's like, it's people like, well, can you tell what color they're going to go to? It's like, no, there's nothing. Somebody someday is going to figure out some way to tell what the babies will grow into. I'm sure someone's way smarter than me. I'm not that guy.
Right.
I don't have the patience. I don't have the space to hold back. What you'd have to hold back like 50 to 100 of them, and just kind of chart everything and try to figure out things and see if maybe there's a hint. But they're fantastic. Like they're the only in that Corn Snakes and Other Rat Snakes book I mentioned earlier, Dick Bartlett mentioned them, but what he was talking about was the South American, which is a totally different species. That was Sustes, which would be Firenax, Polyepsis. Polyepsis is brown, gray, black with yellow. That's it. So he referred to them as the less attractive, angrier cousin to tiger rats. And tiger rats are known for being kind of rambunctious.
Okay.
So like I don't think that was like the only reference you can find early on to them. I don't think being the angry cousin to the angry snake was really the best advertisement for them.
Right.
And being less attractive. But in Costa Rica, where all of the animals that are in the country right now came from, they're every color in the rainbow you can think of. It's just an amazing, especially the Osa Peninsula. They're amazing. Okay. But then there's still some animals coming out of South America, Guyana and Suriname, which would be Polyepsis, not Pacillinotus. And those are different. And then I guess it's still active, Nicaragua, there's been some animals coming out of Nicaragua there's southern Mexico animals that they're beautiful. We're gonna leave them alone. And then there's other Nicaraguan animals, like big air quote Nicaraguan animals that look very much to be Shropshire, which is basically a speckled king snake. That's arboreal.
Interesting.
They are, and they're amazing. Like they're jet black with a yellow spot on every single scale, like a speckled king snake. But it's a Firenax arboreal, 7-foot long, bird destroying machine.
That's cool.
And some of those are coming out of Nicaragua as well, but a lot of Nicaraguan stuff I think is a stretch that if you have a whole country between Nicaragua and where they're known to occur. So I'm a little suspect of everything coming out of there.
Yeah. Gotcha.
But they're amazing, and if we can get legal Shropshire here, I'm all about it because those things are just stunning. My buddy Brian Susan did a bunch of time in Ecuador doing tours and stuff, and he started telling us about them. And they're stunning in Ecuador, but Ecuador has I think they want you to have 3 generations captive bred before they'll allow the export.
Wow.
And I don't know. anybody's doing any work with them at all there.
Gotcha.
So we're never getting them there.
Interesting. Yeah. And then we gotta, obviously talk about kind of your showstoppers, the tiger rat snakes. Let's dive into those a little bit, if you don't mind.
So I have mostly Honduran and Mexican, or everything I have is Honduran or Mexican. Unfortunately, my pure Tamaulipas locality Mexican, which is like the northernmost locality where they're the vibrant tricolor, like you saw at Daytona, those mind-bending animals that I had there, the males don't want to breed. Like, it's infuriating. What I did this year is I did combat. I threw multiple males together and like, hey, if you're not going to do it, he's going to do it. Like somebody's going to get it done here. Let's go.
I'm going to pull these up for the people real quick. Keep talking. You're good.
But the Honduran ones are generally just black and white. Yeah. Yeah, that's
the picture. When I saw that picture, I was just like, holy shit. I was just like, damn. And then I got to see them in person, which was even better.
Yeah, and that doesn't do any justice to what they look like in person.
Exactly.
They're arguably one of it's those and the from Borneo, the Gonosoma paradise tree snake. It's that or this is like one of the two most beautiful species in the world.
Yeah.
Like hands down. I know. Like you can talk all the crap you want about anything else, but come on, man.
Yeah.
But these are at least available. So that's a pure Tamaulipas locality Mexicanus. That's here by the grace of Gladys Porter Zoo and Colette Adams, having pulled them out of Mexico to bring them to us.
Okay.
Every animal that came out of that's available here is from that group that she brought in, which I think was 8 animals that she brought in. They were all mangrove coastal specimens. So they were actually doing sea turtle research. And while doing sea turtle research, or not research, but I think they were checking nest or something. One was I don't know if they're down by you, but up by me, you can hit the beach and there'll be coach whips sitting in the mangroves looking over the beach. And she said, I talked to Colette and she said the same thing. Like you just looked up and saw this beautiful yellow and black and white snake sitting overlooking the ocean from the mangroves. So she talked to some of the locals like, hey, we need some of those. And the locals ended up getting 8 of them. She got the permits together to get them imported in to the Gladys Porter Zoo, did some breedings. Unfortunately, tiger rats live somewhere between 12 to like 25 years. And that 12 is like the heartbreaking side of that lifespan because some just don't live that long. And while she was still in the reptile building, she since got advanced into administration. She was breeding them. And now the new guy that's there isn't as interested in those because they're not venomous and he's a venomous guy and they haven't been producing them. So there's none of the zoos that had them from Gladys Porter Zoo, as far as I'm aware, still have any alive. Like Nashville Zoo had some, and you would constantly, like Nashville Zoo had one of the prettiest animals, and everybody that went to Nashville Zoo took a picture of that animal that I know. Like oh, you breed those? Yeah, I got a picture of one, and it's always Nashville Zoo's animal. And it's like I learned that individual, and that thing was stunning. He's dead. But every zoo that had them they're now dead. You'd be
surprised. I'm actually surprised hearing this from a zoo because like part of their thing is, you would think part of a zoo's thing is like conservation, and for something that's just not around in many captive collections, you would think they want to work on, I don't want to say breeding the shit out of it, but like, trying to reproduce it as best as they can. And
everybody got into
fantastic, amazing.
All the other zoos seem to get individuals, and they're imported in large numbers from South America. Not the same look, not the same species, even. But I think that's part of the problem is they are imported in large numbers. So the zoos aren't that interested in them because they're not venomous. They're not a big flashy animal. No one knows what their name is. Like
Right.
reptile people are like, oh my God, yes, tiger rats from Mexico. Absolutely. Well,
Right.
even in that, so people, I don't know if everybody even gets it. Mexico has a second highest level of endemicism and the endemic species behind Australia.
Really?
Every mountain range in Mexico has unique Sky Island animals. All those alligator lizards that are coming in from Mexico are unique to different mountaintops. Mexico is an amazing ecological region. But because of their mountainous ranges and everything, the tiger rats aren't consistently looking like that. That's only Tamaulipas locality and probably right around that. But into the valleys and stuff outside of that, you've got different looks. Veracruz has a totally different look. They're just yellow and black. Other areas, they're just black and white. So that's the only place that they occur like that. But they're not an endangered species. They're a very common species. They're almost they're like our corn snakes there. They're grabbing people's chickens and chicken eggs and stuff. They call them chicken snakes. So I think that's why they're not too worried about it because we can always get more, except with Mexico and you can't. But
right.
Anyways, at this point, it's myself. I've got 3.1 adults, and I held back 0.2 last year when I produced them. And then John Anderman, who is like the godfather of them between Colette and myself. John is the reason we have John, I call him the silver-tongued demon because he went out and collected every Tamaulipas locality individual animal that was available in the hobby minus 1 or 2. He talked to people and got them to ship them to him for breeder loans. And Black Pearl, John
Michaels.
John Michaels, thank you. John Michaels.
I throw Colubrid and Colubroid a plug every episode, so it's he was just on there if you want to go check him out.
Yeah, John Michaels had he had an animal that reproduced with John Anderman, and so did the Gladys Porter Zoo. It was the initial breeding was I think 13 animals, and they split them 3 ways, and then I ended up buying. That's where I got some of mine. I bought mine from John Michaels, so what he had left because he could not produce them. I've had a very difficult time producing them. They are heartbreakers. They will develop eggs in their belly, which my vet friend who wrote half a Mater's book tells me doesn't happen and isn't possible. But they will absolutely develop eggs where I can count. This female's got 7 eggs. This female's got 6 eggs, and then they don't lay them and they disappear. And they do that consistently. So John Michaels got tired of that, and he's like, "I'm done." I tried them. My guy tried them. He has someone else that breeds some species for him. We can't do it.
Are they like reabsorbing follicles like pythons do, or like what do you think is? You think it's full-fledged eggs?
I don't know. Because I'm not trying to cut one open to find out. But I had 2 females, and one of them did not fully absorb, and she ended up passing. I couldn't figure out what was going on with her. I tried to feed her a couple times, and she wouldn't eat. And then I was like, okay, maybe I need to bring her to a vet. I tried one more time, and she didn't eat. And then I went to check on her, and she was gone. And she had a couple inside of her that I could never feel while she was alive. But when she passed, I could feel them inside of her. And they were not eggs. They were more follicle size or infertiles. Gotcha. Is what I would call them. But they do that consistently for whatever reason. And I think part of it is that the males just are not great breeders. And
interesting.
The reason I produce a lot of Mexican Honduran crosses is I have a 50-50 male that will breed anything and everything. And he's awesome. But the pure animals won't. And what I did last year is I threw him in with the pure female that produced for me, and he started riding her and getting ready to lock up with her. And I'm like, nope. Grabbed him out and put him in his own cage. I'm like, all right. And I had 2 other males in the enclosure. I'm like, and he went and like they didn't combat, but he kind of like went up, rode one for a second, rode a second one for another like just a second, just like, hey, I'm here, I'm on top of you, you can't do nothing about it, and went to the next one, said the same thing, then jumped on her. I don't know if he was trying to dominate him or what he was doing, but he hit one, hit the other, hit the female, and I yanked him at the time that he was on the female, threw him back in his enclosure with all his girls, and he went and grabbed one of the females up there and bred her right away. But somehow I never saw any locks with the pure locality animals, but somehow it happened, and I got the animals I got last year. But I'm going to keep trying. But he is, I think, the key, because he's just willing to breed anything.
Gotcha.
I have there's a Honduran locality that's striped. So again, speckled king front side, where it's a yellow dot on every black scale. Back third to half is jet black, and there's a stripe down the dorsal line of the animals to that back third or half, wherever they happen to go jet black, and that the line disappears. My males from that, I brought in 2.2. I lost one female. The two males won't do anything for me. They should have bred 2 years ago at this point. So the last 2 seasons I've lost out on them. Okay. And I just keep trying. So with tiger rats, it seems like a really strong male breeder is what's necessary to have success with them. So that's my goal this year, is I'm going to throw my same Honduran male with the 2 striped males and the female I have, and see if he sparks some interest from those guys too. I'll have him just combat everything.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's it. I didn't want to suggest that you were like doing something wrong to any extent, but like maybe that competition does a little something.
I'm not having success, so I'm doing something wrong. I mean, that's I always say this. It breeding is just above eating. It's a basal requirement for the species. If you're not getting breeding activity out of your species, you're doing something wrong. I have no problem admitting I'm doing something wrong. What I'm doing wrong, I don't know. I want to correct it. I'm going to try to correct it. Yeah. But yeah, my ego's not like that where I need to worry about whether I'm doing something wrong or not. I have some success. I don't have perfect success. I'm doing something wrong. And that's what's part of what drives everybody, I think, in this hobby, is that it's not completely simple. Right. I mean, some people it's just money, obviously, but I think a bunch of us we're trying to constantly improve. So I have no problem admitting that I'm not doing stuff right, and I'm always willing to take suggestions and ideas from people, because my buddy Scott comes over here and he asks me questions like, "This is a stupid question, but what about this?" And like a lot of times I'm like, "Fuck, yep, that's it. That's the thing I forgot about." It's just stupid things I do. I don't think about it because I got in a habit of doing something, and he just hits me with, "Hey, is this really what you want to be doing here?" And he's always so delicate about it. He's like, he doesn't want to say something wrong to me, but he hits me with stuff. I'm like, "Yep, shit, that's exactly it." So I think all of us need to have that, somebody around that can give them ideas of different things you can try.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And even what you mentioned, specifically the word ego, I think that's something that, I don't want to say people have to drop, but like, some people do have an ego, those who have been doing it for a long time and whatever, and like they're not willing to take suggestions from other people. Like, I think anyone can learn from anyone in this hobby, even a complete newbie. Like I learn things every single day, and I have no problem admitting that. I've been keeping snakes since I'm 10 years old, but I've learned stuff, so many things over the years. It's just crazy. And I continue to learn every day. So I think, education is something that's truly important. And people just shouldn't have egos about that stuff.
Don't get me wrong. I have a giant ego about what I do well. Absolutely.
Yes.
Like,
well, respectfully so.
Yeah, I kick ass on some stuff, but I don't have the ego that says I can't learn from other people.
Yes.
Exactly. I think that's two different things. Like, have some pride in yourself and be willing to say, "Hey, I kick ass right here."
Sorry if that wasn't clear, but yeah.
Yeah, no. But it's I like I said, I'm really good friends with Billy. Billy will tell you I got an ego, like without a doubt. but Billy's also the nicest guy on the planet, so he'll be nice about it. But at the same time, I don't have an ego so big that if you tell me it's something that's I'm doing wrong, that I'm not gonna be like, oh, okay, you got me there. That's it. Like I get it.
Right.
That's I think where some people they fail is that they're not willing to try to learn stuff. Like my day job is I fix doors, automatic doors, and it's a stupidly simple thing for me at this point. But I train guys and they get blown away by, well, how do you know all this stuff? It's like you're gonna learn it. I tell everybody, you can call me every day. I will answer your questions every day. If you call me every day and ask me the same question, then we're going to have a problem because you're not learning, you're not listening. But I'm always willing to help. And it's the same thing with the reptiles.
Yeah.
I was telling you earlier, I had a friend of mine call me she has someone else trying to breed black-headed pythons. And I'm always willing to help people do black-headed pythons because I think one of the biggest problems with black-headed pythons is people don't think they can be successful. The Owen at NPR doesn't want anything to do with black-headed pythons because he failed with womas. I'm willing to help anybody with trying to hash out eggs. He got that far and it failed with eggs, and it's super frustrating when you fail with eggs. I frequently can look at somebody's egg setup and be like, hey, we're at my house, here's what I would do. But at the same time, I talked to a guy in Arizona and I gave him ideas and what, my setup and everything. He's like, that's not going to work. I'm like, well, what do you mean? He goes, well, my eggs are drying out with a water container in the incubation, in the incubator with an aerating stone in it to evaporate water into it. My eggs are still drying out. I'm like,
yeah,
but he's in Arizona where he's got 0 to 10% humidity.
Yep.
So that's one of those things where, like, I say every podcast I'm on, I can tell you what I'm doing in my location with what I have. But when I moved from Florida, where I used all aspen everywhere, to Chicago, where we had heat at night, or New York, where you've got heat at night, and even heat isn't like, if you being in New York, radiating heat is not the same as force blown air.
Right.
Or force blown air would dry everything in the building out.
Yeah.
Radiating heat, the radiators will actually humidify frequently if you have them set up right. So you've got two different types of heat up there. I went to all cypress mulch when I was up there. So I'm not going to ever tell you that whatever substrate you're using is not right, or I'll tell you what I'm doing where I'm at. And then, hey, why is that a problem for you? Okay, let's talk about it. Let's figure that out. I'm always willing to help people like that. But people it's there's always somebody. It's like, if you're not doing what I'm doing, you're doing it wrong. And that's just dumb.
And that's something I've talked about on here a lot, is that different people in different parts of the country are going to do things different. I could tell people all day till I'm blue in the face that I keep my animals ambient, but someone all the way up north can't do the same thing I do. So obviously there's a difference immediately.
Even ambient
care. Yeah.
I can't do ambient. My old house, I couldn't do ambient. The garage got up to like 98 degrees.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. Some people down here can as well. I made sure I rigorously tested the temperature in here all summer long. And it really just doesn't go much past 80. It stays low 80s in here at the most. If the door's open a couple hours, it is. And I was testing all the time. I have Govee set up. Like, I'm making sure, even when it gets hot and the door's open for a little bit, because, like, we're doing work outside, whatever, it'll get a little bit hotter in here for a little while, and then, overnight it'll cool back down. I'm just like, this is amazing. I don't understand it, but it's amazing.
Yeah. So you have to have like a giant tree overshadowing the building or something. That's credible. Yeah. My building, I'm running AC constantly. I've like just the building alone hits me for between $350 to $500 a month in electric. Wow. For my reptile building. So as we were talking about off air, like, I'm not here to not make money. I'm here to make some money for sure. Like, the idea that people don't want to make money in the hobby is always cute to me when I hear people talk about it. But no, I'm here to make money for sure. But that's not the only thing. I'm here to make money with the stuff I love, the stuff I want to work with. But while I'm working with the things I love, you're going to pay me for the effort and the experience I put into them, because I got to cover my costs.
Of course.
So
Yeah.
I just always, like I said, I always find it silly when people say they don't want to. Oh, it's not about the money for me. Okay, that's cool. It's not about the money for me either, but I'm definitely here to make money at the same time.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, it's true, because obviously this hobby, we have to pay to keep our animals alive, to feed them, to keep the electric going. So some things got to give. It's you're doing yourself a disservice, kind of lying to yourself by saying I'm not in this for money at all.
Yeah.
And of course, I love my animals. I've loved my animals since I'm a little kid. But where I'm at this point where I'm breeding now, it's like, yeah, I mean, I want to stop bleeding out of my pocket at some point, because I'm just shelling out cash. My paychecks, I gotta feed my animals, so it is what it is.
I work 12-hour days, and I come home and I put another couple hours in at the building, and it's not. I want to rest. I want to lay down, and I'm not doing that for free.
Yep.
But
exactly.
But yeah.
And then I think the last colubrid species we hadn't touched on was the you do have some sulfurous, correct?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, sulfurous are. So I got into Pusillinotus not accidentally, but I've told this story multiple times before as well. I went to Peru and met a sulfurous in person. That's the picture I gave you for the podcast here.
Okay.
And that was in Peru.
Hold that up real quick. We're talking about these guys.
Yeah. And my wife's like, I hate that picture. Why'd you choose that picture? I'm like, oh, it's the first one I came across. But that thing was 9 foot long, just puppy dog like tame
snake.
Oh, it was beyond impressive. It blew me away, and just I'm like, as soon as I saw it. And so the sulfurous are neat because their range dictates their colors. So in Peru, in certain parts of their range in Peru, because Peru's kind of massive and has various localities there, South Amazon, North Amazon, Eastern and Western Amazon. Same Brazil is like twice as bad. They've just got way more land mass there and a whole bunch of different looks there as well. But the sulfurous, in part of Peru, they are yellow from head to tail. So this animal I met, it did have, it wasn't completely yellow at the tip of the tail, but it was mostly yellow to yellow green towards the tip of the tail. 9 foot long, like soda bottle thick, and puppy dog tame. And then we put it back in the enclosure after handling it. And he's like, all right, so you want to see it feed? There was a school class that was there. And so he threw a mouse in, and I watched it bite the mouse, and blood like squirted out of the mouse like 5-6 feet away. And I was like, oh my God, the jaw pressure on that. And since then, I've been bit numerous times by them. I've never felt like intense jaw pressure like a Crebo or anything.
Okay.
I don't know what the deal is with this individual animal. It might have just hit an artery or whatever it was. But whatever it was, it sold me. It absolutely, I don't know why it sold me, because that's a terrible like sales point that, it bites really hard too. But it was just such an amazing animal. I came back here and I'm like, hey, I want one of these things. And I put calls out to multiple guys I know that have some contacts. Billy, damn it, I just had his name and I lost it. Out of South Carolina, everybody knows Billy up there. I can't remember his name right now. But Billy, I put the call into him. He put it out to everybody, and he said, hey, try calling Crutchfield, see if he's got one. I was very specific. I wanted the smallest individual you can possibly find. I do not want an angry adult that spent the last 15 years of its life living freely in the world, and now it's in my cage at my house, and I've got to try to make it think life is good. Like, that's just a terrible, plus the parasite load and whatever damage it's had that whole time. Like, I want the youngest animal. And all Tom could tell me was he had brought in all sorts of monster animals over the years, And I brought one that was 13 feet long, and I brought in one that was 12 feet long. I brought in, I can get you probably a 10, 12 footer if you. I'm like, no, I want like 2 foot. Can you get me a 2 footer? And he just could not understand what I was even going for. So Ben Siegel, when he was still in operation down there, he brought in, because I specifically said I want Peruvian sulfurous. That's what I told Billy Albright, out of the Carolinas. Bill, if you don't know Bill Albright, he's an awesome guy. He does a lot of wholesale and monitors. Wonderful, wonderful dude. He's just like one of those, like, he's got that southern charm. Like he should have lived on a giant plantation and just been like the guy that served you iced tea or something. He's just the sweetest guy. But anyways, he put out the call, and when he's asking, it gets a little bit more than when I ask. So he put out the call, and Siegel was like, "Oh, well, these people want these, so these are Peruvian sulfurous." So I saw the ad pop up on King Snake and bought them immediately. No questions asked. Absolutely. $350. Here you go. No questions asked. Got them in. They're Priscilla notice. Got another animal listed. Peruvian sulfurous. This time I'm like, hey, Ben, can you send me a picture? Because last time it was a Priscilla notice. He's like, yeah, no, it's Sustes. That was the species, the genus at the time. I'm like, yeah, but the last time it was a completely different species. So he sent me a picture. I'm like, all right, cool. I'll take that one too, because that'll hopefully pair up, because the sexes matched up.
Okay.
Like, that'll hopefully pair up, and now I've got 2 Peruvian Priscilla notice, but I'm 90% sure that these Priscilla notice were really coming out of Costa Rica, because the colors did not match up with what should have been Polyepsis out of Peru. They were all Nicaragua or Costa Rican looking animals, completely bright, vibrant animals, beautiful animals. Eventually,
what do you think I'm interested. What do you think called for like the mislabeling? Was it just like kind of one of those things where it's just like
because people are
animals in the bag? Okay.
I asked everybody I knew. I know Bill Albright went out of his way to ask a bunch of people as well for me. Like, just cool dude, good friend kind of guy, went out and went out of his way. But everybody I asked also looked for him. And I think I asked Ben directly, so that it got out there in the world that there's a call, not because of me, but because of Bill. There's a call for these Peruvian sulfurous.
Okay.
So it was out there. So the animals came in, and that's what they're going to be. I mean, I was going to some of the importers back in the day, and when the green trees would come in, I literally watched, I'm not going to say his name, but somebody who's still in the hobby pulled a green tree python out of a bag and showed it to me. He goes, what do you think this is? I'm like, Aru? Yeah, Aru. Puts it in a container, grabs the next one out of the same bag, goes, what do you think this is? I'm like, I would guess Aru, because it's the same. He's like, no, we're going to call this, Cyclops, or whatever. I don't even remember all the green. But he literally, out of the same bag, pulled out 10 or 12 animals and just put labels on them. That's just,
oh man,
they did that. So that's why everybody's like, oh, I got specific animals from, this locality or that locality with some species. It's like, nah, I've been there. No, you don't.
Okay.
Whatever. But to get the animals mislabeled or misidentified is not that uncommon, especially when it's a rare species at that time.
Right.
No one knew they existed. So with that, I got a pair of Priscilla notice, and eventually a guy who went by Vegas Billy back in the day on King Snake. And that's something I was thinking about when I was coming on this, when I was thinking about taking a shower. There's a whole generation here that were never on King Snake. Which,
I won't lie to you. I used to go on King Snake because I worked at a pet store in New York, and my boss would go on King Snake all the time. He would go on King Snake and Fauna, so that's why I actually know what those sites are. But if I didn't work there, I probably wouldn't. You're probably right. Because I'm in that young generation. I just know Morph Market, but I do know those sites.
The whole YouTube generation now. Anyways, that tickled me earlier. But I eventually, a guy that went by Vegas Billy had a pair of, I just hoped they were going to be a pair. He said there were 2 males. They came in, there were still 2 males, and they got to me. They didn't change sex en route, of sulphurus. And then John Anderman had one of the guys that he had pulled the Mexicanas from, one of the Tom Olympus locality animals. That individual, his name's Tom Stevens, which there's like 4 Tom Stevens I know of in the reptile community. So this is the one nobody actually knows because he's a Florida resident.
I know King Snake Tom Stevens.
Yeah, not him. No, you actually know, you were at the Orlando show, so you actually, whether you know him or not, you've seen him at the Orlando Expos. He always works the Redfoot Ranch table. Okay. He's a teacher, another great guy. Eddie Soto, I think, came up under him as he was his teacher. But Tom Stevens here in Orlando, another just like wonderful, great guy, actually hatched out sulphurus. So through John Anderman, we, like I said, hey, how many are available? I think he had 12, and he was making 8 available. So we bought them all, or whatever's available. We was like, okay, we'll take them all. How much? Like the price did not even matter at all. We're buying them all, and he underbid himself, gave us a great deal on them. We got them all, thrilled to death, and that's what started my group of animals. And then Mike down at Snakes at Sunset contacted me, and his guys just did not want to deal with a pair of them that came in. Again, another pair of males, and one of those was the sire to my red line, and his guys didn't want to take pictures of them, so he gave me a stupidly cheap deal just to take the animals without having to get pictures from them, because his guys were not going to take pictures of them, and without having to sex them. He's like, I think they're males. One's red, one's green. If you want them, I'll send them to you. And he gave me a price. I'm like, okay. Is that with shipping? He goes, yeah, it's with shipping. I'm like, are they alive? Like, that's stupidly cheap. And he eventually just, he sent them to me. I paid him, and he sent them to me, and they came in, and they were just, I was blown away. But sulphurus, I think, Pusillinotus, if we can figure out what makes the different colors occur and be like, hey, here's an animal that's going to be red as an adult, I think Pusillinotus can be massive because they're so cool. They stay slightly smaller. They're a really great species. However, sulphurus, even though they get much bigger, they're like one of the top 5 biggest colubrids in the world. They can get to 14 feet.
Yeah.
All of mine are in the 9-foot range. They're not that 14-foot monster, but if fed aggressively from very early stages, I think they will reach that 14-foot. They have a huge range of colors, locality specific colors that breed true. There's tans, browns, yellows, greens, reds, oranges, and then in Brazil on the Atlantic slope, there are these ridiculous animals that are red and black and yellow and orange in the most amazing color combo. If you go through enough of my Instagram, I have one picture on there probably that's still there that I found off a nature center down there. But I had posted that animal so much, and then I kept putting links to that nature center's Facebook post of the animal. I did it so much and just like begged that, hey, does anybody have any animals that look like this? That they took their post down. So like really? at one point in time, the front 3 pages of Google were all either my animals directly or animals I posted repetitively, like that individual animal. Okay. Like I literally owned Spilotes sulphurus, or at that time Susi sulphurus. The front 3 pages of Google were every single picture was mine. Wow. Yeah, okay. Like I posted that much about them. I absolutely love the species. I think they're fantastic. They're obviously not for everybody. They get to at least 9 feet, if not 10 or 11 feet.
Yeah, and that's no joke either, because we're talking about larger colubrid species. People have to be careful because some of these, not everyone, in my opinion, has the capability to take care of a 9-foot snake, let alone, sometimes I'd say, when we're looking at the colubrid side, like we're looking between 3 to 5 feet on like a bunch of different species is like a good range. But then, you get some of those monsters that can get up to 9, 10 plus. And we're talking about a species here. So it's definitely not for everyone, but it's definitely a very cool species.
Yeah, no, I absolutely adore them.
Yeah.
They're
what
food hogs though.
Yeah. What kind of enclosures are you keeping like some of your larger animals in? Larger individuals, I should say.
I got I'm again, I don't know if even the YouTube crowd's gonna know what neodeshas are, but I've got old school neodeshas. They made an 8 foot by, I want to say it's 30 or 32 inch deep by 18-inch high enclosures that I bought from somebody. A guy in Miami had them, and he put them up. She's like, a friend of a friend said, "Hey, this guy's got these available. Do you want them?" I'm like, "Yeah, absolutely. That's amazing." I was gonna get them for my blackheads, and I brought them home and I cleaned everything out, and all my blackheads were in 6-foot visions. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna move one of these over. And I kind of looked over at my tigers and the sulfurus, and I'm like, maybe they would be cool in these. So I got some branches out in the yard, stuck them in there, threw the snakes in there, and they're like back and forth all over the place. I'm like, yep, absolutely. Nice. They win. The 6 foot, I would love 8 foots for the blackheads as well, or 14 or 16 foot for the blackheads. And the same really for any of the puffing snake complex. They're all of the species, the blackheads and the blackheads basically fill the niche of Crebo in Australia.
Okay.
So it's still a primarily diurnal. They run diurnal to nocturnal depending on where they're at. But they're still visually oriented as well. Not as much as Crebos or the puffing snake complex. But puffing snake complex, that's my own terminology, so I don't expect anybody to know it. The tigers, the tiger rats, puffing, the bird eaters and the giant bird eaters, the Pilatus, Poecilonotus, and Sulfurus. I consider those the puffing snake complex, where they're all kind of doing the same niche. They all could use massive cages. Whether they're tall or long, I don't think it matters to them, because they're no matter what we give them in captivity, it's nothing. None of it's sufficient. Bob Henderson wrote an ATV book back in the day, and he basically put a 4x2 and a 2x4 inlaid on a tree. And he's like, people often ask, which is better, length or height? And the answer is neither is sufficient. So do what's best for you.
Okay.
And it was kind of a powerful image, because it's like, if you really think about what these animals live in the wild, any of our species, we're really only giving them this tiny little fraction of what they would be using in the wild.
Right.
So give them the most you can, absolutely, but realize that what you're giving them is not enough. So try to do a little extra if you can. So a lot of the stuff, when I have my grass cut short, I'll bring stuff out into the yard and let it crawl around now and again, especially the Crebos and the tigers and the blackheads, just to give them a little bit of time out in the sun, getting full natural UV and crawling through the grass and whatnot. But only when I know there's no escape paths.
Got it. And do you use UV lighting in your cages as well?
Not nearly as much as I should. I have some, because I got the lizards. A lot of the UV kind of went to the lizards. I bought a bunch of the LED lights from Ryan and Erica at
what is that, VivTech?
VivTech, yes.
Yeah.
I got a bunch of their lights. Got a hair across my ass and dropped like $600-700 at Daytona with them. I haven't even used the majority of those at this point.
Okay.
But I have them available. I just don't have what I'm lacking is the plugs. I don't have enough spots to plug in, because everything has heat lights as it is already.
Right.
So it's that is a goal of mine. I'm trying to move towards that route. All the neodeshas have the slant side lighting, and then there's a big vent in the back. I can do another UV light on the back, which is my goal with those. Same is true with the visions. So I can do the heat light and still
Okay.
do on the back vent. I can do another UV light. So I want to go that route. And people that say that, snakes don't need UV haven't looked at the science. The science is 100% on it. There's no
Right.
doubt.
Yeah.
No matter the species, they benefit from it. They get more calcium that's active in their blood. At the very least, that's good for reproduction.
Yeah.
Never mind that calcium is what makes all the muscles work. So
right. And I know, I to plug them again, go watch Colubrid or go listen to Colubrid and Colubroid because they're amazing. But Dr. Loafman and Clint have been talking about a lot of UVB lighting and how there's definitely benefits there. And I know Clint's been promoting heavily there's new Arcadia lights that they have the timer in them that allows the lights to come on as if the sun was rising and setting, as opposed to, how a standard timer goes off and the lights just pop on. This one's a little more natural integration as if the sun was rising and the lights increasing. So I think that's a really cool concept. And I think I'd be interested to hear people who use it, the kind of behaviors they may see as they start to implement that.
Herpstat has that available to you as well. They have the ramping. They came out with that years and years ago, so you can ramp up your lighting, your heating, whatever you want to ramp. And it gives you percentages that you're giving it, so you can do it with Herpstats as well. That's one of the things I did is I got my building. Like I said, I've got satellite internet, so I don't have the best internet out here. I definitely don't have any Wi-Fi at my building. So I got just plug-in timers that follow automatically the natural daylight cycle.
Okay.
It's a programmed thing, but you can choose what state you're in, what time of year you're in. So you can choose if you want to try to get ahead or behind or whatever else you want to do to move. Because I've done that in the past where I've moved my hatch dates a couple months because my goal was Daytona.
Got it.
20 years ago, my goal was have everything hatching, have enough hatch to get a table at Daytona,
right?
But also have it hatch in time. I've since backed off on that. I just what hatches by Daytona hatches, and I'm not trying to. I've had a couple bad years since I moved here, so I'm not trying to manipulate anything at all right now. I'm trying to get good luck first, and then once I have consistency, then I'll look at manipulating for timeline. But it's definitely doable. I don't think people realize how much light cycle plays a role, especially when you keep in racks, because you don't really have a light cycle at all.
Right.
But I literally moved colubrids 2 months, king snakes, rat snakes, milk snakes 2 months earlier. Instead of getting them hatching out in August, which is when most stuff hatches out for me down here in Florida, I moved them 2 months earlier, but then found out that a lot of my customers didn't care that my animals had 10 meals compared to no meals.
Right.
If there's a $5 price difference, and I kind of like lost interest in that at that point.
Yeah.
But that's when I was just doing, corns and milks and stuff back in the day.
Right.
But yeah, the lighting plays a huge role, and I think UV plays a big role as well if we can get it figured out for the snakes and what they actually do need.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I think that about does it for colubrids. I think that's the longest we've gone on this show talking colubrids. Now, I do obviously want to touch on, as we mentioned, some of the other species you keep. You've mentioned the blackheads extensively throughout this, and I see them on their page. They're definitely cool pythons, and I feel like they've maybe I'm just not seeing it enough, but I feel like they've kind of lost their allure in the hobby, and I'm not sure why that is because they're just a really cool snake. Do you see them worked a lot?
The price point on them is high, so people are hesitant to get into them. And there's also grades. There's a lot of people that produce blackheads. Their goal is to produce blackheads, and that's what they produce. My goal is to produce amazingly beautiful blackheads. That's what I'm trying to produce. My Swiss line stuff blows away I got a good buddy that breeds them. He always just jokes like, well, all mine are ugly, so I can't charge your prices. So I'm going to charge, a couple $100 less than whatever you're charging on everything across the board. But yeah, the blackheads, they're one of the reasons I started doing the quail, because I've been feeding them quail for years to try to get them started.
Okay.
And that's also why I said I want to help people who have issues with them, because I think that's where the knock is. Where if you don't think you can be successful, it's not a ball python where you follow this formula that we've created and you're going to get babies. Blackheads, you have to actually pay attention to your animals, learn how to incubate, which is people don't understand in colubrids and in pythons that they don't know how to incubate eggs. The eggs hatch, so they think they've been successful. I see a ton of babies when they hatch are bloated. A bloated baby means your eggs are too wet. It hatched in spite of you. It didn't hatch because of you. You screwed up everything. The egg was too tough and still hatched. Or conversely, they hatch out super skinny because the eggs are too dry. People don't pay enough attention or even realize they're doing something wrong to try to fix their incubation techniques to get the eggs to hatch with the babies that are just normal looking. They should hatch out looking like what they look like 2 months later. Right. They shouldn't hatch out in any scale different than that. And blackheads are one that when they hatch out, it was routinely accepted that they come out with this giant bloated look to them and then would eventually lose it. And one of my guys who is constantly a competitor of mine in the hobby here, I mentioned that repetitively for a few years, and he disagrees with me on everything. Okay. And on that, he's finally stating it like it's his own idea, which is fine. Like as long as we're all moving the same direction and working to better the animals and better what we're doing, I'm not looking for credit on it. But I've been pointing out for a while that they shouldn't, and Womas are the same way. They should not be hatching out with that big bloated belly look that they have. That means your eggs are too wet for at least the last couple of weeks. And Aspidites as a genus give off a ton of moisture in their eggs during the last couple of weeks. So if you're not checking the eggs, wiping out all that moisture and eliminating the moisture from the incubation chamber, they're going to be bloated because they're going to be overhydrated when they hatch out. That also leads to dead and egg babies. So when people have dead and egg babies, a lot of times it's because you had them too wet. Hognose breeders are notorious for that. And not notorious because I don't think anybody even realizes it. But to me, it's just like I want to just like grab somebody by the head and just kind of shake them a little bit when they're posting these pictures of their eggs and they're see-through. Like, why the hell would you think a egg you can look through is normal? Like you're so wet that the membrane of the egg has become clear. Like, how did you do that? Like,
interesting.
There's not enough calcium in the diet, and you've got them too wet. Like I went on a couple forums because we in Wisconsin, well, up north, there's a spot where we can go out routinely and find hognose laying eggs. Okay. And a friend of mine was graceful enough to bring us out to his spot when he had found it. And we went up there and every year we would go out and catch these snakes laying their eggs. And at this point, I'm the only person I'm telling anybody about that spot is Dr. Loafman, because I want him to go up and experience it. It's absolutely amazing, but it's also like an incredibly dangerous thing to let people know about, because you can go out and collect all the females out of that population in a heartbeat. They are all coming at the same timeline. But all that to say, they're laying their eggs in dry sand or slightly damp sand. They're digging, and it's amazing. You go out there and you see them. They're using their snout. They're pushing into the soil, flaring out, pulling the dirt out of the hole, flipping over, doing the other side, and they're digging their own burrows to lay their eggs. So we'd go out there and watch them do the entire process. But that end of that process is those eggs are laid in well-drained sand. They are not wet by any stretch of the imagination. But
now I know, my buddy who is a former guest of the podcast, Alvaro, he just had his first hognose breeding season, but he seems to be he's doing the cocoa coir mix, which is not like, if you got it wet, like you get like vermiculite or perlite wet, it would turn into like mud almost, but it's just kind of moist. And I've seen what the dirt looks like. It's almost like dirt. And I feel like it's kind of on the line of this sand you're talking about. So that probably makes sense.
I don't like, when it comes to incubation, my take on incubation is do not introduce an organic substance in case you have a bad egg. You're giving the forward fly something to have purchase on. So I would advise against cocoa or sphagnum. Perlite and vermiculite are available. They're inorganic materials. If you have a bad egg, you can get that bad egg and whatever that egg leaked on out of the egg box and eliminate all of the food for the forward flies. I've watched forward flies on sphagnum moss keep going, whether they're eating the sphagnum moss or not. Forward flies aren't supposed to take out good eggs, but if you've given them a purchase to stay on with organic material, they're going to do it. So just on that alone, I'd say that. But it's vermiculite and perlite. If you learn the medium, you can use that very easily and reliably. That's my preferred method, either one of them. I've gone to perlite recently. I don't remember. That's one thing I was talking about the blackheads earlier. I don't remember why I quit using vermiculite. I just cannot remember why I quit using it. I remember there was something I didn't like about it, but today I'm using perlite. But I know perlite with turtles is a no-no because I guess the turtles will hatch out and start chewing on it. And again, it's inorganic, so you don't want it. But with snakes, I haven't had any issues with it at all. That's my preferred medium at this point. But at the end of the day, my point being is the people don't understand how to set up an egg box properly. It seems like you want it. I basically do a Tupperware with 4 pinholes on each side and barely any moisture in there, and that works for me. I'm not.
And that's specifically blackheads, or that's everything.
Everything.
Okay.
Everything I've done. I've had to go wetter for tegus and drier for other stuff, drier for blackheads. But just on the topic of incubation, if you're doing a bunch of holes for aeration, you're introducing a problem. You've now introduced air, which is going to push out humidity. So now you're going to have eggs that are too wet. If you don't have any holes, then there's no air exchange, and you need to stay on top of open your egg box more frequently. I do 4 pinprick holes, so I can even, if I don't need to open the box, I can just push down on the top of the Tupperware, and it flexes enough that it pushes stagnant air out of the box, and when I let go, it inhales more air, and I don't have to open the box at all. If it's too wet, I pop the box open, dry it off, because I'm trying to keep them dry. And by too wet, I mean if I see sweating on the box or on the sides, I always dry that off. But I think people just they're shooting for that 100% humidity that somebody told them is what is required, and I don't think eggs actually require 100% humidity. I think it's way less than that, but I think we don't understand. I think people are saying they need 100% humidity don't understand how to really measure what they're requiring in that enclosed space. So it's just there's a lot of misnomers in the hobby. I guess that's where it comes back to Ron saying we haven't advanced at all in 20 years.
Right.
Like I pointed out that if you feed the crap out of a snake that just laid eggs, you're more than likely going to make it lay more eggs. And generally, if you're feeding the crap out of the snake, it's because you think it looks skinny. So people talk about, oh, my corn snake, looked terrible after I laid a clutch of eggs, and then it double clutch. I don't know why I did that. It's like, well, did you feed the crap out of it when it looked skinny? Yeah, I gave it like 6 fuzzies right after it laid its eggs. That's why it laid more eggs. Like
Yep.
that female's entire purpose in life is to perpetuate the species. If food is
Yep.
plentiful, then she's going on biologically. She's thinking, I can always eat more food because it's here. So if you present her with a whole bunch of food, she's like, okay, well, I got a chance to make more babies. Let's do it. That's my job. And she's going to kick out more eggs. But just that simple thing, I mentioned that on a podcast, and I got messages for like, I still to this day, I get messages about that podcast. And people are like, wow, I never understood that, man. I always had that problem. I couldn't figure out what the problem was. I couldn't get my females to quit laying eggs. So I'm super thankful you told me that. It's like that. And I had somebody tell me I was an idiot for doing the exact same thing when I was in the hobby 20 years ago, because it was a corn snake for me that was laying, and then it laid a second clutch and looked like it was going to lay a third clutch. And I took an old timer to go, well, quit freaking feeding it, dude. Stop. You're doing it. It's you.
Yeah.
You control everything here.
Yeah. I had it happen with a Texas rat of mine this year. She, I didn't pair her a second time, and then she double clutched, and I wound up with one good egg at the end. Unfortunately, it hatched, and I have a good baby there, but I did feed it. Like, I gave it one small meal, the first meal after, and then I went back to normal because I was like, oh, she looks a decent size. I'm like, she's fine. And then I slowly realized that, yeah, I fed her too heavy, and that's why she gave me that. So this time I'm going to be a little more conscious about it. And if I'm going to be purposeful, I'm going to, make sure I pair and get the most fertility out of that double clutch that I can.
Yeah. Well, my Pasillinotus, they almost always double clutch. So I try to tell people, hey, be aware. And the tigers will also double clutch. So if you're keeping those species, you need to be aware and kind of feed them well before egg laying. And as soon as they drop their eggs, pound them with food, because they're going to do it whether you like it or not. So at least get some calories into them. But at the same time, if you've got other colubrids that the species is known for being able to double clutch, and you see it looks poor after a clutch, your best thing is to not feed it for at least a week or two, if not 3 weeks, and then a small meal, and then another couple small meals for the next couple of weeks, just to not encourage that extra clutch. Because as everybody talks about, we feed our animals primarily rodents, which builds up fat content in the body. And that's what makes, in all species, fat content is what makes you viable for reproduction. Right. There's like a customer of mine explained to me that her niece, who was 12 years old, or 10 years old or whatever. No, she was like 12, I guess. But she had entered puberty at 10 years old because her mom fed her nothing but chicken McNuggets from McDonald's that were full of hormones. And her body fat content was high enough, plus all the hormones in the chicken back in the day. This goes back to like 9/11. It was literally the week before 9/11. She was telling me about it. I went back to her house the day of 9/11 when that all went down. And but she was telling me that there was a class action suit with McDonald's, and all of a sudden they came out with the all white meat chicken nuggets. No more of the mystery meat, no more of the cartilage and the hormones. And that was because of lots of little girls having the same problem.
Interesting.
But it just kind of clicked in my brain. I'm like, oh shit, that's what's going on with the snakes too. It is, because she explained to me, like, yeah, her body fat content reached the point where she was able to enter puberty so much earlier than she should have. And I'm like, what? She goes, yeah, well, body fat content, your not content, but percentage, is a precursor to puberty and sexual activity. And she hit me with that, and I was right when I was like getting into breeding at snakes at the first place, and I'm like, that makes so much sense. So you see snakes, because everybody was asked, hey, is this snake big enough to breed? And my comment's always the same. If you're asking me if it's big enough to breed, it's not big enough to breed. You know it's not big enough to breed. You're just asking me for permission to push an animal that's too small to breed.
Yep.
Now, like, I'm not giving that to you. But when you're on that cusp, a lot of it is whether or not they're going to ovulate, and they're going to ovulate if they've got the fat content in their body to do so, which is also one of the reasons I started doing the quail and the chicks. I do a lot of avian prey because it is lower fat, and it allows me to feed consistently and heavily, but not with so much fat within the rodents, because
Right.
I don't know how the hobby got to the stage where rodents were accepted as a complete diet. They're not a complete diet. Our animals will subsist on them, they will live on them, and they will successfully breed on them. But realizing that living and breeding are the two most basal activities besides feeding. So if your criteria is that the animals do the most basal things that they're supposed to do, that all species do, given the other 2 points of the criteria, that's not a very good metric.
Yeah.
Are our animals living healthily? So you need to look at, are your animals healthy? You can get chicken chicks so easily at this point. Quail chicks. I all my Crebos, I'm feeding nothing but either button quail or Cotornix quail to start them out as babies, because I don't have, I refuse to feed frogs, and I have frog legs that are previously frozen, but I refuse to feed fresh frogs and lizards, which will be their diet in the wild. And rodents are nowhere near the composition of the food content. Chicks are not either, but they're a leaner, more protein rich, and more likely closer to. And actually, back to Colubrid Radio, Dr. Lopen had mentioned a study where they said that chicken chicks, or avian chicks in general, were the closest to a snake diet for Drymarchon.
Okay.
So it kind of backs it up even more so, but it's a leaner food item. So that just things like that. You can get, like I said, frog legs from all the Asian markets, and chicken chicks are readily available. For us to add other things in the diet is just a good thing, I think, all the way across the board.
Yeah. So I started switching all my rat snakes that are large enough over to quail, and I've been loving it. They've been loving it, and I'm gonna keep it up, because I like just seeing how they are. And I'm gonna be honest, even the shits that they're giving me, like everyone has been telling me, oh, with birds they'll be messy. They actually haven't been horrific. They have not been that bad. And we're talking about a Texas rat with a very fast metabolism. I've been loving it. Been giving it to my adult female cockseye as well. She smashes them like crazy. I can only get the Cotornix over here from the guy I'm getting them from, but the day olds work well, and then the smalls, when they're big enough to take them, has been working real well for me. So I don't know if I'm going to look back to rodents, maybe at some points, to keep it variable, but I've been going like full quail for a little bit now.
Well, I breed the buttons, and the buttons are just bigger than a large pink.
They're small, right? Yeah.
They're tiny, but the shape and the composition of their body is such that even if a snake can barely take a large pink, they can still take the button quail, or smaller, because they have various. There is size variance in the babies as they hatch out, and the smaller ones, like I all my Honduran milks are taking them.
Okay.
So I mean, Honduran milks have a very small throat.
Yeah.
And they're taking them. All the rat snakes take them, no problem. All the Crebos take them, and I've been feeding them in myself. The carpets, I was going to say, the carpets are just monsters for them.
Yeah.
All my carpets that were like not really interested in food, I started throwing, and I'm cheating because I have freshly out of the egg, live, hot, little, just snake crack. But the live buttons were just destroyed by the carpets that were not taking rodents. Like I had, I think, 16 carpets last year. 4 took rodents. The rest wouldn't touch them. I got 3-4 weeks in. No, 6 or 8 weeks in. They still weren't taking them. I threw buttons in, and by the time I finished putting a quail in each drawer going down, I got to the bottom drawer. I looked at the top drawer. There's no quail visible. Next next level, none, and then like the drawer directly above where I just finished, or the layer above, they were just then wrapping them, and so I opened the last drawer, and that had already wrapped, and I'm like, good God, like within seconds they just nailed them.
Yeah,
so
that's awesome.
They're not a silver bullet, but they're as close as you can get to one.
Now, how has that been for you, keeping and breeding the quail themselves? Have they been like, and I don't want to say an extra challenge, but like, have they, brought a new equation to it? I don't know if you were breeding rodents previously. Like, what has that been like?
I don't do rodents. The quail dander is everywhere in my building. Okay. My AC just froze up because of it. In that regard, it's been a nightmare. I'm looking at, I have some outside. I'm in country. I've got rats on the property, whether I like it or not. And they're getting into the Cotornix and the bobwhite cages I have. And they're mostly fine. I had one Cotornix that a rat ate the feet off of. I just went out there one day and I'm looking at it. I'm like, why aren't you up? Like usually you walk up to the cage, they all stand up and they bebop around and do their thing. And one was just kind of looking at me and was trying to get up and wasn't getting up. So I reached in and picked it up and flipped it over and just had two little nubs that the damn rat ate the feet right off of it. So I can't put the buttons outside. The buttons they're I don't know, a fifth the size of a Cotornix. They're tiny. So the rats would just eat the buttons completely. I mean, they're like finch size. So they're inside, so I don't have an option with that. I have another building I think I'm going to move them to. That's been the biggest hassle is the dander. Otherwise, it's a couple hours a day. My wife helps me out. She takes care of them.
Okay.
In the morning, early afternoon, and when I get home, I put an hour into them. They're not terrible time wise. And I got a buddy, Scott, that comes over and he cleans them all for me once a week. The ones that are inside, the ones that are outside, I don't have to worry about it. But the animal, the snake side of things, and my tree monitors devour them. They love them. My Ackies destroy them. Like everything I've introduced them to takes them. They're amazing. But the food bolus in the gut of the snakes doesn't swell. It's not as extreme. So even if I'm feeding a similar size food item, I don't see the stress on the animal, and they get digested faster.
I agree.
A rat seems to sit on them. You give them a mouse or a rat, you got 3 days maybe before it kind of dissipates. The quail, it's like a day and a half, 2 days.
Yeah.
So it's a faster processing, less swelling, less stress overall on the animal.
Yeah. So when I would thaw some of these small size Cotornix, I was like, these look huge. I'm like, how are my rat snakes taking these? Because like, a small rat, they're that long kind of, it's almost like a rectangle tube. Like it flows down easily. These are these like big puffy like circular birds, and I'm like, how the hell is this snake taking this down? But you're 100% right. When they're swallowed, it doesn't look like it's taking as much room, and also granted they are smaller in weight, but it doesn't look like it's taking up as much room as a small rat would, or even a weaned rat sometimes. So yeah
no, and like I said, they process them quicker. I've never I just don't. There's a lot of issues you see with rodents that I don't see with the chicks at all. So, yeah, the buttons. Anybody that if you need buttons, I got them, because if you got problem feeders, a bunch of emerald tree boa breeders hit me up.
Oh, like
wow. Somebody, I don't know who it was exactly that got them aware of it, but I just got an onslaught of orders, and it made it easy. Like they're saying they're taking them. And then all of anything in the Pythonidae group just slams them. It's insane. Like any of the Euro-Asian or Euro-Australia, or not Euro, Asian Australian pythons, just they go nuts. So anybody's having a problem with those because again, they're anything that can take a large pink or barely takes a large pink can take the buttons. So they're amazing. And with the Cribos, like I'm feeding them every couple days because they process them so fast anyway that it runs right through them. And that's for young snakes. That's another thing. Like we get on the idea of once a week or once every 4 days for young snakes.
Right.
In the wild, a lot of these snakes are eating small items every other day. They're not eating something that swells them up. They're eating small items every other day. So a lot of my Cribos or my tiger rats, take a hopper mouse maybe, but I'm feeding them a Catornix chick or 2 or 3 or 4 button chicks because they're available to me, and they're gobbling them down. And a day, 2 days later, there's no sign they've eaten, and they're super active. They're doing their thing. They're passing their feces. Those are the metrics you want to look for. So you don't want to. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna ask. So like when, at least with babies, you're kind of looking. You don't have a set schedule like that. You're kind of just looking and going on looks on, if you should feed them or not, and what you should be feeding them.
If I should feed them, and if my incubator's full, and if I want to freeze them that day or not. If I don't want to freeze and I just want to feed off what's available, I'll grab 50, 60 baby button chicks and go through and feed them all off real quick.
Gotcha.
And they're definitely getting more feeding opportunities. Whether or not they're getting more calories, I don't think so. I think they're lower calorie, lower fat, higher protein. I'm not seeing exponential growth or anything like that. I'm not. And that's not even my goal. I'm looking for a healthier animal at the end of the day. Right. So they're getting plenty of food, but they're not getting the rodent fat that they get with the rodents. They're getting, yolk instead of mother's milk on the young stuff. But it's too early for me to say this is definitely way better or not. I haven't done it long enough. It's been 2 years now. What I've seen in 2 years, I've seen leaner, healthier animals that are still in the same growth rate I want to see them on.
Awesome.
So,
yeah. And you're doing it yourself, which is great. Cuts out, I'm sure, quite a large feeding bill. That's a big daunting thing. Yeah. 100%.
That's a plus, man, for sure.
Yeah. All right, man. We talked about a lot of species. Did I miss anything? I think there's still a ton of stuff that we may have missed. You mentioned some tree monitors, some you have the Ackies as well, and then you do have a bunch of different carpets. You have a beautiful diamond I've seen on your page. Those guys are amazing to me.
Unfortunately, oh God, I forgot his name. Doug Price, unfortunately, had some health issues and had to get rid of his diamond. So I picked up one of his diamonds. Doug's one of those guys that put a lot of uncommon species that are in the hobby today are, a big part of it's because the work he did quietly in the background, not looking for any acclaim or anything, and just doing his thing. So, I mean, rings and blackheads and womas and diamonds and all sorts of stuff that he did in Angolans. But I got a diamond out of his group as that was getting sold off, and a diamond from Tampa Snakes as well. So I got a pure pair, but they're not going to breed till next season. Then I've got a 75 and a 50, so I'll produce 75s and 88% diamonds hopefully this year. And I actually, even though I have pure stuff, I don't know, I haven't produced the pure stuff yet, so maybe I'll be blown away by the pure stuff and I'll think I'm a scumbag for doing it in a couple of years. But the 88s, like the 88% jungle diamonds are just stunning to me every time I've seen them. But hey, maybe I'll call myself a jerk later.
Yeah. All right, cool, man. Anything else I missed species wise?
Oh, I don't know. Probably. I got a bunch of stuff out there. I got a whole bunch of rainbows in recently.
Okay.
Hopefully those will do well for me. I got one stunning male that came in. A guy was just getting out of stuff. He hadn't bred anything for like a decade, and the animals were not in good shape. They're not breeding this season, I don't think. But a couple of females are in decent shape, I should say. But overall, they weren't in great shape. But just some stunning animals that he had in his collection. And I'm always interested in picking up collections if possible, if the situation's right for me. So the guy made it available. It was actually because of womas. I've made the statement for years that womas are just worse behaviorally than blackheads, and I'd gotten out of my womas because of that. But then I moved my blackheads, animals I'm keeping, into glass front enclosures. And like I said, I've seen behavioral issues with animals kept in drawers. I kept all my womas in drawers. And all my womas did that king snake. As soon as you open the drawer, they tried to eat you. But then repetitively, I kept having people tell me that, hey, my womas are great. I know what you're talking about. I don't have any problem. My womas are really well behaved. I never had that issue. So I wanted to get back into womas just to put them in glass front enclosures, give them some time, and really give them a fair shake at it and see, is it my keeping that's giving behavioral issues to them, or is it they have behavioral issues that's just going to be a thing? So a friend of mine said, well, hey, if you're looking to get in some womas, this guy's he's trying to sell some adults. Might be able to grab those. And I contacted the guy, and he's like, well, yeah, I've got these womas plus these rainbows. He couldn't even tell me what the sex ratio was or anything else.
Okay.
But I ended up grabbing all the animals from him for a super cheap price, which was great. And I don't know, so far I'm happy with them. The rainbows are
nice,
voracious, and want to eat my face every time I pull a drawer open. So they might also go into some cages as well. See if we get away from that problem. But yeah, I don't know. I think I like most people. I got the postage stamp collection. I just tend to get more postage stamps of each species, and some people do.
Nice. Are there any potential species ads, like anything that's catching your eye right now that you're like, yeah, I think I have to have this at some point?
The Asiatic and European rat snakes, I've always liked them. I just haven't done well with them.
Yeah.
If I do well with the cave dwellers this year, I might do beauties, and the Euro stuff, I might grab some Euro stuff instead. I'm hesitant to grab stuff that's not going to do well for me.
Yeah, of course.
I don't know if it's my style of keeping or what the issue is, but I might try them again.
Okay.
I know tons of people that do well with the Asian stuff down here in Florida. All the beauties they do well with. I had calico Chinese beauties years ago, and I really liked them. They just didn't do well for me. That was in Chicago, so it wasn't even a heat thing. My style of keeping didn't mesh with them very well.
And what was it like? You weren't getting them to eat? Were they not breeding, or like what?
They just weren't doing well. It wasn't
okay.
They ate. I didn't keep them long enough to get the breed. I didn't feel like they were doing well for me. Like I just got some. I got some bloods in to see if I like bloods. I don't like bloods. Bloods don't like me. I've always liked them, looking at them. But keeping wise, I don't have the right setup for them, and they just didn't do well for me. And I just didn't really, they didn't have that thing that was like, yeah, this is a cool species to keep. Yeah. They were just a bigger ball python, really.
Kind of.
I got Angolans. Angolans they've been cool. Like
those are cool.
They look like a ball python, but don't act like a ball python. So I'm cool with them. And even the balls. I kept a couple balls way back in the day that I had I just threw them into a corn snake enclosure that was a 55-gallon aquarium that was all decked out with tree branches.
Okay.
And those damn things were all in the tree branches. They never touched the bottom of the cage. They were arboreal, super voracious feeders. They were great.
Interesting.
But they were monstrous females, and somebody wanted to give me like couple $100 a piece on them, and I found them actually about a mile from where I live now. So it was $600
Really?
for some wild caught snakes. I'm like, hell yeah, I'll take that.
Oh my
But
God.
I didn't. I never. Besides those two, I never. Nothing about ball pythons that ever grabbed me.
Okay.
So it's not that I dislike balls. And that was even before the whole market takeover and everything else. Like back in the day, they just never grabbed me. So there was a guy who lived just north of me here that wanted me going in on wholesale purchases with him. He was looking for other people to fund it so he could buy a large, like the larger lot you bought, the cheaper the price got. And he was trying to get the price from like $6 a snake down to $3 a snake if he bought enough animals. So he's offering me in on it. He's like, "Oh, we can double whatever we get him in for. We can at least double, if not quadruple the money." I'm like, "Yeah, but what happens if we don't sell them? Then I gotta sit on 2 or 4 or 600 ball pythons I don't like in the first place."
Yeah.
And then he doubled everything he brought in. He, made his money. Him and another guy the other guy paid off a house, like paid off his mortgage doing that. But at the end of the day, still, if they don't sell, what am I going to do with them? I just don't. They don't grab me.
Yeah. Hindsight is 2020.
I don't. The money would have been great. Don't get me wrong.
That's what I meant. Yes, the money would have been great, but even still, that was a big risk, and you didn't want to take it. And I
was cleaning pools at the time and jobbing, the old school, going and buying from the wholesalers and dropping there all the pet stores. Like I was, doing what I could to make ends meet at the time. Even still, I didn't like the species to begin with. Like whenever I bought them for pet stores, I would only buy them if I had somewhere to drop them off because I didn't want to bring them home. Okay. Everything else I brought, I'd be okay. I'm willing to bring all this stuff home. So I don't know. It just, at the end of the day, if you really like the animal, no matter what it is, you can definitely make money in this hobby / business. As long as you have a personality. If you have a personality, you can sell your species.
Yeah.
Because all you need to sell your species is passion.
Yeah. I agree.
Disagreed with almost everything Brian Barczyk did in his life. But one thing he did is he presented a image of passion. And he was one of the most popular people in our little niche. Like Animals at Home just had a guy on, I can't think of his name right now, and he just kind of pointed out something that we forget. There, you've got your group that's watching what you do right here on your YouTube page, and I saw you got Trap Talk. He dropped in, and he's like the most popular guy, and he's got his little group.
Yeah.
But all of our little groups add up to 100, 200,000 people tops.
Still a small hobby in relation to the country's population.
Well, no, so what he was pointing out is there's 6 million reptile owners in the country.
Oh, okay.
But there's only like 100 to 200,000 people that attend all of our shows and watch all of our videos and participate in our hobby. So we're always like, oh, you're the biggest guy in the hobby. To 200,000 people at most. You're not reaching the 6 million. Most of those people don't even look at what we're doing here. No, they don't know about any of us. It's really kind of an interesting thing. Like the people he was pointing out, and it was just like, it's true. We really crap on the pet stores. Pet stores shouldn't keep reptiles, but that's the only reason that any of us, at the end of the day, realistically, with the exception of a very small group of people, it's the only reason any of us are in the hobby today.
Oh, 1,000%. I can say it for myself.
Niche. Yeah. The pet stores are there, and they're a massive, massive tool for us. So I try to support local pet stores that are good reptile stores, and try to support people that are good people. And that's just kind of what I try to do.
Yeah. Awesome, man. Kind of my wrap up question that I've been doing for people. It's been a great show so far. Is what would be your piece of advice, or almost your like elevator pitch to someone who's looking into some of these more like obscure species that you keep? And let's stick with the colubrids. Let's talk about even kind of the puffing snake complex and all those guys, like brand new keeper wants to get into them, what's your biggest piece of advice, or again, elevator pitch?
Enclosures. Do real good enclosures.
Yeah.
Another Roy Blodgett, who does his own podcast, he's got an amazing, like, I wish I was as cool as him, enclosure for his sulfuris.
Yes.
Where he went and looked up every species of plant that coincides with where the range of sulfuris occurs that does well in a terrarium, and he gets so much out of that terrarium and so much interaction, and realize that any of these diurnal species, the more you give them in their enclosure, the more they're going to get back to you and what you can watch and what you can observe and enjoy. So they're definitely a group of snakes that you're only going to enjoy as much as you're able to through viewing. They all handle, that's one thing. The whole puffing snake complex, the tigers are like the least defensive, I guess, of the group, but they all handle very well. I have zero worry about handing off any of them. In fact, I handed off a 8-foot sulfuris female to kids routinely when I was up at the CHS. Wow. And no one ever got bit, never a problem. They just handle very, very well. But in the cage or even in pulling them out of the bag, they will occasionally puff up and strike at you. But they will also do crazy things like Kayla Martin. Hope I'm saying her name right. She just picked up some Poecilinotus. And I said, well, here's something for you. If you set them up in a terrarium, you'll get the great freeze that they do when you enter the room. Like, it's one of these crazy, funny things. If you walk in the room and they're mid branch climb, they will stop and stall and stay there, and they won't move. I said, you can even go in and clean the enclosure, and they will dedicate everything to that freeze as long as you don't touch them. And as I'm telling her, like, I'm typing it out, telling her, and she's just like, LOL, shoots me a picture, and it's exactly that. She had just walked in the room, and her snake was like almost on a branch and just sitting there, like, please don't touch me, don't hurt me, don't eat me. I'm not going to move. And then eventually it gets on the branch and then does its thing. But it's one of those things they do. Our sulfuris giving a large arboreal enclosure, talking to Roy, he's seen it, and I saw it when I had taller enclosures. They'll climb up, and as their tail leaves the ground, it doesn't just stay straight. It does like a cartoon pigtail coil.
Okay.
And when they're jet black, it looks like some of the vines in the Amazon that reach down to the ground. So if they stall and freeze, it looks like the way their tail's coiled, it's just a vine coming down. You're never going to see it.
Wow.
And it's like, if you don't have the appropriate setups, you're never going to, these little observations, you're never going to
see that little behavior. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Talk about the guy who renamed or who moved sulfuris into Spilotes. He was a member of the CHS and Chicago Herp Society. And I went in and I talked to him like, hey man, my sulfuris were mating today, and they're doing the same thing that the tigers do, where they interlocked their tails and went opposite directions, and they were facing two different ways. He's like, oh, okay. I said, that's pretty amazing. Like, you moved them to a genus where the mating behaviors are the same. He's like, yeah, but we don't. He's a geneticist rather, and he says, yeah, we don't do behavior with genetics. That's not what we do. I'm like, right. No, I get it. The genetics and behavior in this case line up. And he's like, yeah, no, we don't. That's not what we do. We just looked at the genetics. I'm like, yeah, but come on, dude. Like, there's a handful of species of snake on the planet that breed like that. And you just happen to have two that were genetically close to each other that also have that behavior. That's freaking cool, man. Come on.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But no, yeah, just it doesn't even have to be what I keep, though. Like, even your Texas rat snakes or whatever else, if you set them up in enclosures where they get to do what they do naturally, you get to see what they do naturally.
I'm
you
sure
miss
I
out on
would.
that. You miss out on that with the racks, and it does take away. I would say it doesn't, but it does take away from your experience.
Yeah.
And you get to kind of like, but also if you get to see that behavior, if you ever go looking for them in the wild, then maybe you're thinking, oh, well, wait a second. I saw this in one of my enclosures, but we also have to pay attention because there's things that they do in enclosures. I talked about this on another podcast, the cleaning their face, the chin rub, cleaning their face after feeding thing. We've all observed that. We had a couple guys that did talks for us independent of each other by a few months at the CHS, and they both talked about that chin rubbing behavior outside of feeding experiences where individual animals came back. So I don't want to get into it. It's another giant long tangent, but long story short, the cottonmouths and rattlesnakes both had, in two different people observing this, would chin rub specific things, and then return later on, whether it's food or their den sites, food related or den sites, they would return and tongue flick the spot that they chin rubbed the night before, and do rapid tongue flicks, which we all know is them identifying something. They identify food, they identify you, they give you the rapid tongue flick. So they would return 24, 48, 72 hours later, do the rapid tongue flick on the spot that they chin rubbed previously, and then did their behaviors, whether it was go to the den or set up in a ambush position for a food opportunity. We've watched that. And I mean, I've watched it 1,000 times with all my animals. And we always anthropomorphize that as they're cleaning their face. We never think that they're scenting. That, hey, I just had a feed. Here's a good feed. A good feed just happened, and I'm going to scent this spot right here, so I know good feeds are right here. They're in an enclosure. All their spots are good feed spots. That's all they get. But
it's funny as you explained it like that. I'm like, are they scenting the enclosure? And that's really, really interesting.
But we don't know of any. Like both guys that when they talked about it said, we are not aware of any scent glands in the chins of cottonmouths or rattlesnakes. There's a few species that they have scent glands that they emit, like there's an oily substance that one of the sand snakes emits, and then they rub their chin on it, on their cloaca, and cover their whole body with it so they don't lose moisture and stuff like that. We're aware of it in different species on a scientific level, but for the purpose of what we're talking about, we're not aware of it. So it's like one of these crazy things, and we've all watched it in our collections, but we still don't ever really realize what's going on. So all that to say, if you give a nice enclosure to your animal and you watch behaviors and behaviors reoccur, there's a reason for it. And kind of like try to figure out what that reason is. Don't simplify it too much.
Yeah.
Because like back to what Ron said, we haven't advanced in 20 years, and we're at this stage right now with all this naturalistic enclosures and everything being way more popular, and people going back to enclosures from racks. As we go into that stage, there's this great chance for advancement. We just have to pay attention and have the people that are willing to take the risk and willing to think outside the stable box that we have in the hobby right now. It's probably not going to be me. I'm too busy. It's going to be somebody younger with more time on their hands. But there's people that are going to come up with ideas, or like I said earlier with the cage design, being able to figure out a way to provide the nighttime dew for our animals that they all are requiring to drink off of. And it was Eric from ZooMed was telling me that somebody in the chameleon, because I just mentioned it to him this past week, and he said the chameleon world figured that out about a decade ago. That the chameleons, if they weigh them overnight, giving them the water available at night, they would always be heavier in the morning. But if they remove the ability to drink overnight, they'd always be lighter in the morning, and they would actually drink out of their water bowls, or they have to spray them to get them to drink, or whatever the different species were doing. But a guy was just like,
you're saying weight, like grams, like a significant enough difference overnight. Really interesting.
Yeah, they would be, because they would just absorb all that water overnight. I think he was even
Wow.
saying absorption, not even drinking.
Okay.
There was chameleons. I don't do chameleons. I wasn't 100% paying attention, but it just that right there, just that one step. If we could figure that out, we're going to advance the hobby immensely
Right.
just with that thing. And there's all these other things out there, UV lighting, everything else that we have a chance to do stuff with. We're in a great time at this point. We have all this technology, and the desire is kind of lining up at a great timeline. It's just we have to not be lazy and actually move forward a little bit, figure stuff out.
Yeah, 100%, man. Well, this has been a fantastic 2 hours and about 35 minutes. You are now the reigning king of the longest Colubrid Corruption podcast episode. So props for that. 12 episodes deep. Jason, thank you so much. There were 16 likes on the video. I can't tell how many views there are until we leave, but I assume there had to be at least 20 throughout the entire podcast. What do you have to say to everyone who watched throughout this entire episode and anyone who may watch the replay?
Sorry for so much of your time being taken up.
It's okay.
I've got some rants. Yeah.
It's all good. Hey, look.
Rants and tangents.
This was a load of great information. So I really appreciate you coming along. Anyone who wants to be on top of Jason's stuff, I did put his Instagram in the description, so you could go click on that and go check his page out. We showed off one of the animals here, but it's, hold on, I'm gonna just read it off. It's the Snakes Unlimited _ Jason Hood. So yeah, go follow him on Instagram, check him out on Facebook as well. I know you're there. You do Morph Market at all? You have anything available there?
I have not. I was privileged enough previously to not need it, and now
Gotcha.
I had a bad year the last year, so I didn't need it for other reasons, just not having the animal availability. But I might start doing it. They don't have a feeder section, but I might do it for just to be able to try to push some quail out, because I'm filling a freezer full.
Yeah.
So yeah, if anybody wants, I know you've got a guy that does a Cotornix quail, but I got the button quail and Cotornix.
Yeah.
So
dude, definitely put it out there on social media, because I bet there's people that may not know that you do it.
I'm horrible at self-promotion.
No, you gotta do it,
not my deal. Yeah.
You got it.
Well, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Again, thank you so much. You were a wealth of knowledge. This was a really good episode. And yeah, I'm gonna run the outro. I'll throw you backstage, and just once again, thank you so much.
Thanks, man.
Right. No problem. Guys, what a good episode with Jason. Like I said, longest episode in Colubrid Corruption history. So we'll have to top this eventually. Who knows when? But guys, if you enjoyed today's episode and you stuck all the way to the end, 1, I appreciate you. 2, make sure you hit that subscribe button, because we just passed 700 subscribers. We got to make our way to 1,000. We're going hard on it. Thank you for anyone who checked out my last video. That was a cool video. Doing well so far. Thank you very much. Hit that like button on this podcast. Show Jason some support. Go give him a follow on Instagram, like I said, in the description below. Like I said, also all my social media here. Go follow me on Instagram. YouTube, obviously you're here already. Morph Market. Go check out what I got. And Facebook is kind of just a filler. All my Instagram stuff goes there. Again, Meteoric Serpents t-shirts available. And yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. Again, there is a playlist of all the podcasts. If you want to binge them, put them at 1.5 speed, and you can listen to them pretty quickly. That's what I like doing when I listen to replays. 1.5 speed and run through them. But anyway, guys, this has been another fantastic episode of the Colubrid Corruption Podcast. Thank you for tuning in to episode number 12 with today's guest, Jason Hood, Snakes Unlimited. Peace out, guys. Hope you have a great rest of your weekend and a great week whenever you're listening to this. Peace out.